Let's call to order this regularly scheduled City Commission meeting of the City of St. Pete Beach. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Grill.
Here.
Commissioner Frizlowski.
Here.
Commissioner Marone.
Here.
Commissioner Grouse.
Here.
Mayor Petrola.
Here.
Motion carries. We have a quorum. And that.
Getting ahead of yourself here.
Right?
All right, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add an item, a discussion item on, I'll call advisory board members / public officials. Thank you.
All right. Any other?
Yes, sir. I'd like to add a discussion item on legal update on Army Corps of Engineers beach renourishment.
All right, any other changes? Do we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Frizlowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Marone.
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill.
Yes.
Mayor Petrola.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. City Clerk, do we have any audience comments?
The first person I have that submitted is on behalf of an organization, and I do have 3 people who designated their time for a total of 4 people. So Jolynn Lawson, please.
Thank you. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, good evening. My name is Jolynn Lawson, 5407 Leilani Drive. I'm here tonight representing Protect St. Pete Beach Advocacy Group, and I have a packet, if I could distribute. Thank you. So I'd like to talk with you about this document, and it's entitled What Residents Want in Redevelopment Projects. A couple months ago, during a commission meeting, you all mentioned that you've heard clearly that residents don't want 75 rooms per acre, but had not been told what they do want. So over the past 2 months, our members have had meetings and conversations with hundreds of residents from all 4 districts to identify factors that must be considered in redevelopment projects to ensure true win-win situations for our community. You'll see bolded, there's some general topics: preservation of existing view corridors, no continuous walls on Gulf Boulevard, balance property use between buildings, parking, and open green space, out with the old and in with the new, public access easements landward of mean high water, reasonable and justified density and height, no further increase in height or density to follow, respect resident beach access, environmental protection, support for shared infrastructure, and then finally partnering during hard times. I would like to call attention to a timely topic that is unanimously recognized: the support for shared infrastructure. Because this issue is so important, I'd like to summarize it for the record. Large developments place demands on our shared infrastructure that are unfunded by property taxes, which primarily go to the state and county, or tourist taxes, which go entirely to the county. St. Pete Beach has significant infrastructure challenges today with no clear solution, including, number 1, increasing the number of visitors requires additional funding for law enforcement and emergency medical services. To maintain service levels at current population and tourism levels, St. Pete Beach just added 4 additional fire and EMS personnel, and 2 law enforcement personnel. These hires were only to catch up to current utilization, not to plan for future growth. Number 2, while utility undergrounding is currently underway on Gulf Boulevard, these changes primarily benefit resorts and those who frequently transit the large resort district. The rest of the island continues to deal with the above-ground utilities that are slowly being hardened, where Duke Energy replaces obtrusive wooden poles with even larger and more obtrusive power poles, all while leaving remaining phone and cable lines on the cut-off original pole. St. Pete Beach desperately needs a coherent plan to relocate all utilities underground for better resilience and aesthetics. Number 3, as one of the earliest adopters of reclaimed water, St. Pete Beach has an aging reclaimed water system with pipes constantly springing leaks. These high-pressure water jets create springs under our roads, require crews to constantly tear up pavement in a futile effort to patch aging pipes. Even worse, we waste a tremendous amount of nutrient-rich reclaimed water, which drains into the storm sewers and waterways, feeding algae blooms and red tide that can transform St. Pete Beach from a paradise into a cesspool of rotting fish. St. Pete Beach needs complete replacement of its reclaimed water lines so we can responsibly irrigate our landscape without polluting our waterways and tearing up our roads. Number 4, the Don Cesar neighborhood has seawalls that are too low to prevent flooding during high tides and even modest rains. As one of the earliest neighborhoods in St. Pete Beach, it needs funding for a plan to cooperatively improve public and private seawalls along with appropriate drainage to reduce flood risk. More broadly, across our island, we are looking at needing 30 to 50 pump stations over the next 25 to 35 years, according to our Public Works Director. St. Pete Beach, this is number 5, taxpayers pay or fund the freebie. Everyone benefits from tourists not bringing cars to the island, and more tourists means demands for the freebie. The freebie or similar microtransit service should be supported by residents for the benefit of their guests. Number 6, increasing commercial density in one area on the island increases the value of parks and open recreational space in other areas. Should additional density be warranted in the large resort district, one reasonable condition would be funding the conversion of the Quarry Landings into a waterfront public park after addressing any necessary cleanup. The simple fact is that our city does not receive enough of our ad valorem tax dollars back to fund these essential improvements, and residential taxpayers have been perpetually subsidizing the physical and public safety infrastructure that makes our tourism economy possible. According to the Pinellas County Property Appraiser, St. Pete Beach currently contains 50 hotels with 2023 property tax bills totaling $12.6 million. In comparison, residents pay for 7,317 residential properties with 2023 tax bills totaling $92.3 million. Residents pay over 7 times more property taxes than hotels and resorts. It is unfair and unacceptable to further increase burdens on our residents when we cannot take care of our current infrastructure needs. Developers might argue that their guests are funding themselves via Pinellas County tourist development taxes. Unfortunately, nothing could be further from the truth. While St. Pete Beach is the largest per capita contributor of the bed tax, that money goes entirely to the Pinellas County, with the exception of the recent emergency sand restoration on Paso Grill and Upham Beach. St. Pete Beach receives no infrastructure support from this funding source. Instead, Pinellas County is preparing to give $300 million of those tourist development taxes as a corporate welfare to the multi-million owner of the professional baseball team who lives in New York and is personally worth an estimated $800 million. Pinellas County is giving $25 million of these tourist development taxes for expansion of the Salvador Dali Museum in St. Petersburg. The bottom line is that even if we pursue overdevelopment in our current framework, we will not dig ourselves out of this hole, and adding $200 million in taxable value during a redevelopment, for example, will only add about $600,000 in annual tax revenue to the city, an insignificant amount relative to the needs above. We pay too much taxes, yet little of our taxes remain here to help us at home. Because of this stark economic reality, the St. Pete Beach residents cannot afford to continue subsidizing development and the cost of tourism. To help us meet these basic needs, we are asking for elected officials in St. Pete Beach to bring developers in Pinellas County to the table to find a way to make development and tourism work for everyone. Thank you. Appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you so much.
Neil Blackburn.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, hi, I'm Neil Blackburn. I live at 107 17th Avenue, St. Pete Beach. And about 3 months ago, as you might remember, our trash pickup service was interrupted, canceled actually, for alley pickup in Paso Grill. And the last, meeting before last, so October 10th, I believe it was, about a dozen people were here and spoke to that issue. I know it seems like a minor issue for probably everybody, trash pickup behind your house instead of in front, but probably most everybody here has a driveway and a garage in front of their house. 3/4 of Paso Grill doesn't have that. We have alleys. So it's a bigger deal to drag your trash from the back of your property to the front. And it's very hard for many people that are older and disabled as well. So I believe it was October 10th. Several of you said you might give us an update. Mr. Dickman, Mr. Saunders said they might have an update by now. So I just wanted to see if that was ready and if you had any information for us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Claudine Reese.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, Claudine Reese. I'm at 3120 East Vina Del Mar Boulevard, St. Pete Beach. I'm here tonight to just bring up some items that were said at the meeting last night. And as you all know, we had our planning board meeting, and it was said by our District 4 board member that it was intentionally disregarded, the emails and the data prior to the meeting, because the reason was she was determined to only hear a city attorney and city planner presentation for the first time. Now, I find this unacceptable. The resident emails, the citizen input, these are part of the record, and I don't understand how anybody could make a determination based on 0 opposing views. If you're not going to hear the residents, then what is the point of allowing the residents to even speak?
If you'll please silence your cell phones.
So basically, I just feel that it was not in keeping with public trust. You have to listen to your residents. That's, I believe, part of why you do the job you do, and we appreciate it. We appreciate everybody who volunteers and who works, but it's just your responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Edna Hicks.
My name is Edna Hicks. I live on 46th Avenue, St. Pete Beach. Following up on what Claudine just said last night, the presenters dazzled the planning board, and they were successful as judged by the lack of questions asked by the board members or asking for any numbers or proof of the material presented. We even had one member admit that she had not read any of the material prior to the meeting and was going to absorb everything there. I would be fired from my job if I did that, but I digress. Our newest member was the only one with any questions, the only one willing to postpone his vote until he had further evaluated the 150-something emails he had just received. But then again, we the citizens are just laymen. The city attorney advised otherwise. The applicant dazzled us with methodology. Methodology was substituted for actual numbers. The presenter stated that traffic did not exceed 90% of the service volume of Gulf Boulevard. Wonderful, but there's definitely more to the absence of actual numbers. The presenter said the traffic growth was negative 2.6%. Is that true? And what are the actual numbers? Yet none of the board members questioned this. Are these extrapolations correct, and do they reflect actual St. Pete Beach traffic patterns? They accepted the percentages and never asked for real numbers. They also failed to question future development, increasing these numbers as cumulative. This is not just about the Serrata. If we bend over backwards and acquiesce to all these developers want, we are settling the precedent for the next one. Pedestrian casualties that will surely increase as we increase density was also allowed to slip by. Why is the city not doing its own traffic studies representing real traffic patterns and peaks, including the cumulative effect of all the proposed projects, without extrapolations and far-fetched assumptions? These studies should be done at maximum density and the increased max room possibility of 4,875 rooms if a density of 75 rooms per acre is allowed, and the results analyzed and density adjusted as required until an acceptable safe level is achieved. We're not against the development, we are just against overdevelopment. When the applicant stated they could not reduce the rooms in the luxury hotel and make their numbers viable, why not eliminate the third hotel? That might be a compromise that the city of St. Pete Beach should accept. We urge the city to do a thorough evaluation, not just dot all the I's and cross all the T's. There is something called a compromise. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Dana Richardson.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Dana Richardson, 5830 Bahama Way South. I'll be plenty on my time.
Not for you.
At last night's planning board meeting, our city attorney advised the planning board to only consider testimony by experts. The residents of St. Pete Beach hired Charles Gautier, a 45-year city planner, to provide a detailed analysis of the Serrata Cup and how it relates to our comp plan. I want to know why not one of our board members used it to question the Serrata's experts. One board member even admitted to not reading anything in advance. As residents, how do we communicate to you, our city officials? We provide petitions signed by 1,300 residents. We pack meetings to where people need to go outside. And we pay for an expert to provide analysis besides Serrata, so we get a non-biased opinion. What do we need to do to get our voices heard? And to piggyback on Edna, I think the city needs to pay for their own traffic analysis. There is something wrong with that. Anybody here who lives in St. Pete Beach knows that it is extremely difficult with the jaywalkers and everything at night to travel the roads and be safe. So the thought of possibly doubling our visitors is really concerning. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Kurzman.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
John Kurzman, Bahia Honda Way South, and I am not speaking as a beach steward. I have some questions about the comprehensive plan or some comments. The first thing is that it says the city commission may approve applications. It doesn't say shall, meaning it's not required. It's May. The next thing is that, and I have raised this before, but one of the criteria is that you maintain an open, when you have a building that's taller than a certain size, 50 feet, or more than a certain density, I think it was 30 units, you must consider maintaining an open view of the waterfront from neighboring properties. Not just vistas, which are narrow, the view, not just the shadow, not just the trees. You actually are supposed to ensure that for waterfront neighboring properties, you're not going to build something that blocks someone's waterfront view that might have been wide. Also, there was somebody who pointed out, an expert actually, she said, be very careful that our plan is fantastic. It gives you the definition of redevelopment. Really struck me. Listen to these words. The conversion, relocation, reconstruction, structural alteration, or enlargement of any existing building and or use. Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say you can create a new building. Redevelopment is not a new building. It's not a new use. It is an alteration, conversion, relocation. So keep that in mind. Also, what happened to process? In our comprehensive plan, it says if an applicant submits new data or information at any time after your determination of completeness, the revised application will be subject to the same stages of review as the initial application. So where was the community meetings? Where were the whole cycle of publication and everyone getting to look at everything when new things happen? Maybe someone wants to introduce a pool or a restaurant at a new level. Maybe, I heard at the meeting yesterday, I don't want to get into details really about a particular application, but you know, when things change, you're supposed to start the process over. I don't think it happened. And then community development. What's the point if you're requiring the city clerk to have information 3 days within the community meetings? What's the point of having these processes? I did a Freedom of Information Act. It took me 5 months to see information. Other people did the same requests. What's the point if I didn't have that information to use? Instead, I only got to see even the proposal November 6th for an 11/13 meeting, and we were told, well, you know, if people waited to the last minute to submit their comments, it's our fault as citizens for not reaching out and supplying them sooner. I didn't even see the proposal till November 6th. There's a lot of other things going on in our lives. I've spoken about taxes. Remember, the businesses are not being taxed for the beach itself. And then also, don't forget, we need bike lanes and not just wide sidewalks. And don't forget, we just agreed last meeting to spend more money on our pumping station. And if you have more crap going down the pumping station and you're replacing it, it just makes your job harder. Thank you.
No further audience comments?
Do we have copies of those can we get those charts from Mr. Kurzman?
I'll email him. He's good about that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, yes. May I just clarify something really quickly? There must be some misunderstanding or misinformation going around that I made a statement to not listen to the public. That's absolutely not true. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody, any group, and talk to them about quasi-judicial procedures. They're very different than legislative procedures, and you all and the planning board, whenever those procedures are happening, you're sitting as judges, and the importance of expert testimony is key. Now, there can be lay testimony from the public, but it has to be fact-based. And the statements that I made was trying to encourage the public to make fact-based comments that were related to the criteria of the application. And that's really key. I know it's complicated, maybe from a layperson's point of view, to watch these quasi-judicial hearings. And I'll offer myself to go out and meet with any community organization, with Protect St. Pete Beach, even though and now they have a lawyer, so maybe their lawyer can educate them to how quasi-judicial hearings work. The parties are the applicant and the city, and then you have the public. I have to advise you of the law and how to conduct yourself. There was, in no way was I trying to denigrate the public, because I really appreciate the amount of people that come out, because it tells, I think that's good government. So I just want to be clear about that. And if anybody wants to have private meetings with me, if it's one-on-one or as a group, I'll do that, and I'll explain that how these quasi-judicial proceedings work so that it's clear. Because if there's anyone that cares about due process, it's me.
Were you referring to my comment?
No.
Thank you, sir. All right, next we have item 3, consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
A second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Marone,
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill,
Yes.
Commissioner Frisowski,
Yes.
Mayor Petrola,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have action item 4A, Pinellas County Multi-Jurisdictional Community Rating System.
That's a mouthful.
You didn't get the whole thing out.
Good evening. Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah.
Julie Anderson, Building Division Manager. Nice to be here. I'm not sure if there is really a need for an explanation that's too lengthy, but you received a report. It's an annual report produced by Pinellas County and the jurisdictions that participate in the Program for Public Information. We all attend virtual meetings along with the city stakeholders. They're city employees and city stakeholders that participate. We get CRS credit for that. CRS is the community rating system that gives us our flood insurance discounts for the National Flood Insurance Program. So this program, the annual report that you received, is something we're required to do every year. I'm not sure if it's been done in previous years, but I'm doing it. So it's a little late getting to you for 2022. They put it out, I think, in May. So we're giving it to you now. You'll probably see me in 3 to 6 months with another report. So if you have any questions, let me know. You're welcome.
Questions?
Well, Julie, thanks for the explanation, because I was wondering, I saw Bill Palmer's name all over it. And
Yeah, it's older information, and I saw that too. They haven't updated this. This is not the more updated report. The one you're going to get next should have up-to-date information. We keep sending them anytime we see incorrect names and whatnot, but there are actually 4 people that participate in these meetings.
And who are our reps now from the city?
Within the city, me and Mark Vasquez.
Okay.
He's our floodplain administrator, so he needs to be there.
Right.
But
Okay.
I did notice the same thing, but it's dated January 2023, so that was,
That's
that's
when,
the reason why Bill Palmer's name is in there.
well, Pinellas County put that report out in 2023. They were preparing it in 2022, and I think that some of the information rolled over from the end of 2021.
Okay.
So, yeah,
So in that, this is a countywide plan
correct.
that we participate in with the other municipalities, excuse me, in the county.
Yep.
For emergency use. God forbid we have some sort of emergency that we have to actually implement. This is one of these
Yes,
plans
it's-
you never want to go implement.
There's a lot of information in there for emergency use, but it's also other layers such as getting the information out ahead of events so that people can be prepared. So it's prepare, and then, oops, here's an event. So what follows an event is quite extensive.
Actually, I thought Pinellas County did a good job. I don't know if you're all, I'm not sure how I got on the alert system. I guess I signed up for it at some point in time, but
Yep.
the alerts have been really good. I mean, not that I wanted them, but in the last few years, we've had plenty of alerts, and I thought they did a good job of, doing it at a right frequency, and it was very factual, and, I mean, that's one of the things that I read here. I said, yeah, I've been a part of that, and that has been good. Communication is really important.
It's key.
Especially when you never know when we're going to be out of power, or you're out of town, wherever you're at, and you're wondering, what is going on with St. Pete Beach, and you're hearing this news about Florida or about, Pinellas County, and you want really more pinpoint information.
Right. And you get information ahead of time, preferably if we have a PIO at some point that comes back into play, they can start pushing messages out. Just general messages informing people of a lot of the things that you saw in that report. So, yeah. I think it's just a consent item. I don't know that you have to approve it, but it did say a motion to approve, so.
Yeah, it does say motion to approve. I was wondering, we're approving it, but
Yeah,
I guess they want everybody on board.
I suppose.
Well, I'll make the motion to approve the Pinellas County Multi-Jurisdictional Community Rating System Annual Report as presented.
I second the motion.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Grouse,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill,
Yes.
Commissioner Frizlowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Marone,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla,
Yes.
motion carries.
Next, we have item 5A, public hearing, ordinance 2023-15.
An ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, related to membership into the Florida Retirement System, providing for correction of scrivener's error, construction, publication, and an effective date.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Matthew McConnell, Assistant City Attorney. So this was presented to you at last meeting. This is an ordinance that the state requires for the firefighters to enter into FRS. This is the second reading. We created a business impact statement. This was a template that was provided by the state. The one caveat here is we are running towards a pretty hard deadline for the December 1st implementation. There's a vote that's going to occur over the next week, and I don't normally do this in the middle of the meeting, but we're going to actually, if this does get approved, we're going to need it executed right now so that I can run it up to Sheila Dalton and she can upload it to the state's website. So yeah, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer it, but this is just part of the checklist of documents we have to send to the state. We'll be uploading it today and then overnighting it via FedEx with Amber's help tomorrow.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any questions?
No. Any changes from the last time we looked at this?
No, the only difference is we prepared a business impact estimate. Even though we do think it meets one of the exemptions, we just want to get you familiar with seeing these things as these ordinances come forward.
Thank you.
No problem.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move to adopt ordinance 2023-15.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Grill,
Yes.
Commissioner Frizlowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Marone,
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have item 6A, Resolution 2023-22.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, adopting a records management policy addressing records retention and disposition, providing for severability, conflict, correction of scrivener's error, and an effective date. Just give me a minute and I'll speak to this item. So this is a resolution and policy that my staff and I put together for the city. We did have one that was created before my time. The city used to use a vendor that specializes in records management, and he came from, I think it was worked with the Florida State University, and he put together, it was a very heavy records management policy that just, it was too much, and it needed to be simplified. So my staff and I researched other municipalities to kind of put something together that would work for our municipality. And this is just good practice and good for government. It allows for better transparency, quicker access to records. It reduces storage because the policy is moving away from filing in hard copies and making the digital copy the master copy in our digital filing, what I call our digital filing cabinet, Laserfish. Laserfish stores in PDF or in a TIFF, and it is recognized as the official record by the courts. So it is just as good as paper, and it is there. It's not going to burn up. It's not going to get destroyed, right? So I'm asking for you to authorize this, and this is really just one step in this path that my staff and I are working towards. What we would like is, once this is adopted, then I'm going to put together training and then train staff on what is appropriate records management. What does that look like for their individual needs? And then help them understand how to use Laserfish. What does that look like? Why is it the best for the city? And just kind of go from there. I did speak with Vice Mayor Grill, and we addressed a couple of things within the policy on page 105 of your packet, the section titled Texts. I talk about how it is best to have text messages regarding city business only on city devices. But the reality is not every employee here has a city device. So I'm going to put a sentence in there that addresses that if you are using your personal device to text business needs, which sometimes happens, it's fine, but it's the employee's responsibility to retain that according to the appropriate GS schedule. GS is the Florida's code for appropriate records management. Depends on the content. It's not specific for text message and email. There's no specific GS code. It depends on the content. So the employee would have to be responsible for either downloading that and emailing it to me and letting my office dictate what that GS is, or coming to me, or just keeping it on their phone. It's going to be up to the employee on how they want to go about that. And then the next item we talked about, he and I talked about, were further down. I specifically mentioned Laserfish. Laserfish has been around for a very long time, and it is really the leader in digital management of records. So I call out Laserfish specifically, and I'm going to tell you, as long as I'm here, that's what the city is going to use. Also, records management policies aren't just stagnant, right? So this isn't going to be adopted and never looked at again, right? So when you look at these things over time and you adapt it to the needs of the city, I will say, oh, is Laserfish what the city's continue? Yes, then I'm going to keep it in there. So I don't really think I need to remove that. I think it's important to identify specifically to the employees what is expected of them on how to manage their records digitally. The next item that he and I talked about was on page 106. Under disposition of public records, the last line talks about periodic audits. I explained that what auditing looks like now is more of a spot check, just because there is very limited digital records. Digital records really are the city clerk's records, and some other departments have began the process of migration. So as we get more people involved in Laserfish, we will do a better audit and tracking with a form to understand what are the strengths and weaknesses, what does each department need, because it's not one size fits all. So I think that if I add a little bit more detail in this specific line about auditing, what that looks like, and preparing a report for you all to understand the records management needs of the city. So I ask that you adopt this resolution with the changes that I've mentioned, unless you have other changes that you'd like to discuss.
Thank you. Commissioners?
I don't have any questions or changes.
Yep, I'm good with it.
I'd just like to say thank you for putting this together. I think it's important for us as a city to have a framework for records retention, I think for a few reasons. First, it's the statute, and we have to follow the statute. And second, and these are really in no particular order, but also for us as a city to have the records, so because there's always questions that come up and we need to go back. Hey, remember what we talked about a couple of years ago? I mean, we do have Ward, and Commissioner Kozlowski, who is a wealth of knowledge for us. But we don't have a Word drive, so we need to have something. Jokes aside, we need to have something, be able to go back, because none of our memories sometimes aren't very good. And I think it's also important for us as an organization, for the public, because the public does ask questions, and for whatever the subject, and we're able to go back and fulfill those records requests that come through and be able to provide those and not say, well, geez, I don't know, what happened to the file? Who's got those papers? I don't remember. And so it adds also, to me, a level of transparency and customer service to the public, which I think is, very important. So thank you for putting that together. And I think that, on the point we talked about on the auditing and the reports, it's not to be certainly in a punitive fashion, and please nobody misinterpret that. It's to say, like any process, when you execute a process, you should test it. How's it working? What am I doing well? What do I need to improve on? Is it an execution problem, or maybe I need to go back and relook at my process? So it's good to have these reports and routine reviews so that we know. Because if you don't know, then you can't do anything about it. So thank you.
Yep. I guess I do have one comment that I remember a city clerk told me years ago, was that it's not just the filing system, it's the retrieval system. You have to be able to retrieve things. Filing things are easy. You have to be able to find it. So being organized and being able to find, that one thing out of millions of documents is the whole trick to the system.
And that's one thing that's just really amazing about Laserfish is it's essentially like a Google. So I can type in words in parentheses or in quotes and type in multiple quotes, and I can pull up layers of files and find it. Like I get people that call and I search in between departments and in the public and you all. It really is a much easier way to manage the records.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-22.
I second the motion.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
I can't remember where I'm at. Did you want to say something, Vice Mayor?
With the changes.
Yeah, with the changes as mentioned.
As
correct?
mentioned by the city clerk.
Right? Is that what you're approving, Commissioner Frisowski? You're adopting it with the changes?
Yeah, I know there were questions about it. Maybe, can you just go back over the changes?
Yeah, so I was going to change the texting part of the paragraph.
Okay.
About if you use your personal device.
Okay,
those
I'm
are
good with that.
Those three things
Yep.
that I had mentioned.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good with those.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Frisowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item 7A, freebie service expansion discussion.
Evening, Jennifer McMahon, Chief Operating Officer. The discussion tonight is, as you recall, back in May, our Community Development Director did a PowerPoint presentation giving you some analytics with the freebie as requested by this board. In those discussions was how to improve a shorter time. That was the direction that was given then in our budget meetings in September, on September 11th, where she presented some options to incorporate the looper service. So we budgeted an additional $166,000 in this year's budget to address some of the issues that were brought up in the discussions about the freebie service here in the city, to shorten the waiting times and to improve that service. Since then, our Community Development Director has left. Elena's here, that was assisting Michelle. She kind of picked up some of the pieces and circled back with freebie about this. What we have discussions with them and the owner-operator, that the dollar amount that Michelle provided to you all in the budget would not be able to cover a looper service. So what he did is took the number we did budget, and he has offered us two options that he feels might even better service what it is we were trying to achieve. So with that, there were two options where he can implement, freebie can implement 4 additional vehicles during high season, so February to July, or 2 additional vehicles for the entire year. That would be up to you, and the peak hour schedules, it's on your agenda reports, 4 to 9 Monday through Thursday, 3 to 10 Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday. Either of the options would give us a total of 6 or 8 vehicles during the highest demand periods of the day. So that is what the discussion item is. It stays within the budget, but it just changes what I think the direction we all got from you all with the looper service. There also was some concerns with the looper service from the drivers. Elena here rode around with them. Their concern was pulling over on Gulf Boulevard on a regular basis without an area to pull in. You would essentially be in the lane because the bike lane is smaller than that. So there was concerns about that. Those are the two options, and it's just here to discuss that. We'll come back to you once we get direction from you to make an amendment to our existing contract. He's ready to put these in service beginning in February or at the beginning of the year. And then their contract is up towards the end of next year.
Thank you.
If we do this, just one point of clarity, in the summary report, staff report, it says they want a 2-year commitment from us, but they but they won't raise the price.
Correct. So currently, we are just over $30. The city of Dunedin just signed, actually, with Freebie. They are doing a looper service in their downtown, and their cost is over $39. So when we do a different contract with them, I don't know what to expect, but they are putting in an additional $250,000 to our city to be able to add these vehicles to it. And then I think what was proposed to get us to that 166 was 210 days of the looper service, which was 128,000. And that added additional 3 vehicles on just Friday and Saturday from 4 to 8. And that's where the hardship was for them to have those 3 additional vehicles assigned to our city that's only operational for 2 days. Doesn't make cost effectiveness on their operation to be able to make that commitment to us for 2 days of operation during the week. So,
did they provide any insight or input with regards to the home location of these freebies and whether or not it would increase or would shorten pickup times if some of them were located in maybe District 1 or closer to 75th Avenue, instead of having them all down in Paso Grow where they're all coming from one location, where we already know that if they want to get up to, it's now Hippie Shack, not Sea Hags. Okay, they're somewhere driving, or they're coming from home base and they're driving the 4 miles plus. So I don't know, and maybe that's on us to
we
guide
had discussions about doing that in the new Public Works yard, of being able to have stations there. I don't know. I've been a freebie expert now for about 8 hours, so I'm just trying to get the ball over the hump here. So Elena might be able to have more insight on that, on location.
And while she's coming up, do we have any, I think it's time to take another look at statistics, numbers, performance. The last time we actually saw numbers from on freebie operation was March, when we had the last presentation with
May 9th.
Okay, it was May? Okay. Sorry. But do we have, and it's good to see them so that we know how is the system operating, what are the, so we get away from anecdotal quotes and say, okay, how long on average does it take for calls? What's the abandon rate? How many, what's the cycle time for from time of pickup to
So
drop?
a lot of that's in that presentation. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
Finish that. We tried to get I know you wanted to get some cancellation rate. We got the information from Freebie today. It's very hard to discern because sometimes people ask for the freebie and within 2 seconds cancel it. So I don't know if they're just trying out the app so there's a lot of room for error in the numbers we get. From what we can discern from the numbers that we just got 2 hours ago, was depending on the month, it's a 3 to 19% cancellation of what was requested. With the additional vehicles, I think we can get to the 15 minutes as the most is what was offered, and I think less than 10% of the actual pickup that was in this report was over the 15 minutes. Is that true? I have the
That is
slides.
important in updating us on ridership and how our people are moving throughout our city.
Yeah, because I'd like to, before we decide, okay, we'll do this service for this amount of money, I mean, it sounds good, but what's the problem? What do we need to, is there a problem? What is it? How do we fix it? And what's the best approach for it? Because you could always spend more money and have more buses, but.
Well, that's why we budgeted more money, because you all wanted to not go over 15 minutes. And so where the information that we had of when that was occurring was peak times, particularly Friday and Saturday, and from FY '23, the amount of times it went over 15 minutes was 13%. So that was a discussion that you all wanted to try to fix that, so that 13% we could fix by adding the looper at the time, but it looks like we have these two options instead to talk about.
So if we do either of those options, what does Freebie estimate the 13% will become?
I think the commitment is for us to get below that 15.
15 minutes?
Correct.
I mean, an error is an error. I mean, a failure is a failure. Is 13%, I mean, a good number or a bad number? I don't know. I mean, nobody
Well,
likes
the
failure.
ridership, I think, was 87,000 in the year before. So,
A lot more than.
and we were even increasing in 2023, and I don't have the final numbers with all of 2023, but we're, I'm sure, over $100,000 riders that we're. 114. Yes.
And we did save, they did officially cancel Central Avenue trolley, so we're saving on that too, right?
$80,000 saving
Yeah.
from PSTA.
Yeah.
To answer your question for the charging infrastructure, a part of the $250,000 that they are saying it's going to cost them in order to implement this service is the installation of chargers at their expense somewhere more central to the island. One thing that's really holding them back in their delivery of service is being able to charge up quickly and then go run out for another pickup. Running all the way back to Paso Grill is really affecting their headways for that.
Good. So we also will have to find them the space to do that. Or unless you have?
Well, we could potentially locate it at the community center, close to where the chargers are, public chargers are, because the infrastructure, the electricity is already there. We could locate it here at City Hall.
The library also has chargers.
Yes, they do. I think ideally we would leave those spaces for the library and for Corey Avenue patrons, but lots of other options as well.
Well, the Public Works yard, as Jennifer mentioned. That's a.
Mayor, could I add one thing?
Sure.
I believe also, if I recall, they were going to replace the fleet.
They are. So they're part of the $250,000 is they're having to invest in additional vehicles just to, provide the service, but they're also going to replace the entire fleet if we agree to in a 2-year extension, which will make their vehicles more charging efficient. Over time, the batteries lose, viable charging life. So
the fleet is looking a little rough.
Yeah.
Some of the vehicles have they've been out there for a long time, and they're definitely showing some wear and tear.
114,000 people though in a year.
Yeah.
For sure. Slamming those doors. Do we have a breakdown in the stats you got? And I know, as you say, you just got them, so I know you're not totally familiar with them yet. The breakdown between, do they call locals or visitors, or residents or visitors? And I know we back in May, I think it was 50-50 roughly.
If you have the presentation with that. As far as collecting resident information, that's a program that we would have to work with them on because they don't have any way that they can track resident use other than the zip code that they feel comfortable holding onto that information. So if we implement some sort of program where we track resident use, they can, like y'all talked about the priority system, they can implement that, but it has to be something that we figure out kind of on our end.
Like in the app, if the app included an input of your social security
not that
social security number, that's the zip code is part of the app.
The zip code is part of the app currently, but it doesn't go any deeper than that. So that's all we have as far as being able to track resident ridership versus.
They had provided something before? Because we had I remember the chart.
It was the zip code. It was based on the zip code of the rider.
So just for apples to apples, can we look at the same?
I can absolutely update the presentation that we gave and.
I like numbers, but it helps also, and jokes aside, it helps us to know performance and then figure out the problem and what is the problem we're trying to solve.
I think the problem you're trying to solve was to keep it under 15 minutes. I thought that was the main objective.
Well, I think that is the problem we're trying to solve, and I think we need to take a couple steps back and look at it and say what's causing the problem, right? And to your point, Commissioner Grill, is if we had actual data where we knew, is it our residents that are using it to such an extent that residents can't get access to it? So, anecdotally speaking, I'm a frequent user of the freebie, and my cancellation rate is above 50%. And my wait time at over 15 minutes is the vast majority of times. Very rarely do I get one within 15 minutes. In fact, you can request one, and you can wait a very long time. And I wait because I want to know the information. I want to have the data. Whereas a lot of people, if they'd waited as long as I did, they would have canceled the request a long time ago. And that goes to something else that was brought up tonight by one of our residents, and that is, we're looking at spending an additional $160,000, but where is that money going? It's our residents' tax dollars that we're spending, and who are we spending that on behalf? Are we spending it on behalf of, our visitors, or are we spending that on ourselves? And I thought the 4 times that I asked about, and this is I'm not, don't take it personally, please, but I know I've requested multiple times to be able to get information from the service provider whether we could have a resident priority system, because that way we can very clearly tie the service that this group of people is paying for the group of people that is paying for the service to receive priority to receive the service. And one of the questions I have tied to that is, if we gave our residents priority, would we then still need to increase the level of service, or would that fix the problem of having a 15-minute wait time, right? Because if that solved the problem, then we wouldn't need to spend the additional $160,000. And then further to that same point, I know in the past, the interim city manager has worked with many developers on development agreements, right? So that when there is additional, stresses on the infrastructure, whether it's transportation or something else, for those individuals to be able to contribute to that, to alleviate some of the problems, some of the increases that they might be causing. And so I certainly would want to wait before we agree to anything else to look at some of the upcoming developments and see, is that something that we can work into the development agreements and say, if you're going to increase by whatever number it is, we don't know for sure, but that we have a mechanism so that our residents aren't continuously stressed with their tax dollars to pay for the increases, to pay for the increased level of service, and so that our residents receive priority.
Well, I think Elena answered your question about the residents. Yes, we did ask them about that, and they can implement it. We have to provide the way to do that.
Well,
so we have to come up with whatever technology that we incorporate that. So yes, that can be done. If you want to wait till some of these developments happen, it's not going to be in time for peak season. So we budgeted, based on what your discussion was at previous meetings in our budgetings, to budget this $166,000. Why I am here today is because we need to pivot the direction of what that service looks like. You wanted to change the level of service. We budgeted to be able to do that. I'm giving you 2 options to able to solve that problem of getting below that 15 minutes. If you want to look in the residents, we can try to figure that out. We've talked to our IT department. There's many ways we can try to do that. We could work that out and bring it to Freebie, but Freebie has said that they will be able to implement something like that if we provide the means.
So the service provider, right, and what they're providing us is a software and hardware, right? The software, like Uber, Lyft, and all the other ones that you can use all over the world,
have mechanisms by which you can track this information. Why are they asking us to come up with a system when it could be, and I know enough about software to know that this would be a relatively simple coding issue where you add one extra field, and that extra field pulls the data. So why are they telling us that we need to come up with a system? What do they want us to do? Like have a person sit in a freebie and take notes every time somebody comes in? Why aren't they giving us a simple, like, we're the client, right? The client is asking information, tell us how to do it, and then tell us how much it costs. They're telling us, well, if you want it, you guys go figure it out.
Well, I think they wanted to what's the best interest. We talked about different ways of doing that. Tying to our parking passes is one way we talked about it. There was a commissioner here that didn't want to put in their personal information to be out there as well. So we're getting different things from everyone. We need direction to move forward if you want to continue with the freebie service and increase the level of service that we're providing today.
So I'm sorry. Let me just get this one out. Right. So again, I'm thinking in simple terms. Put your driver's license in. It's safer for the driver. It's safer for the service provider. If there's an issue, I mean, I don't have a problem when I use Uber or Lyft or anything else. They have my driver's license. They have my credit card. They have everything, right? This isn't any different. And it would certainly improve the safety concern issue if there was ever a situation. Now I don't have Joe Blow, but rather I have Adrian Petrola, and here's my driver's license, and here's my address, and here's everything else. And if there's something that needs to be done, they could easily be addressed. And then you can very easily say, hey, this is a resident, here's where they are. This person gets...
What happens if your reason you're taking it is because you don't drive a car, and you don't have a driver's license, or you can't drive anymore because your license has been taken away from you for some reason because you're elderly or what have you, then you don't have a driver's. You may have a Florida ID, and the Florida ID may be, as long as the field shows the same number of digits, or it can accept a Florida ID. But there's a lot of people that, I say a lot of people, I don't know that there's a lot of people. Yeah. There are some people that ride the freebie that don't have DLs. So there's probably a way we could do it if they had a Florida ID.
But, well, you have people that live here 6 months out of the year that don't have a Florida driver's license.
Right, so we're
property tax.
But what's the definition, I mean, just for discussion, what's the definition of a resident? A taxpayer? Someone with a Florida license? I mean, to me, I don't want to overcomplicate it. That's why I keep saying if the problem is to get to 15 minutes, is there physically, if we move the charging stations up to, I'll just pick the rec center or the public works yard, will that help them operationally, performance-wise, to meet the 15 minutes? And is that if that's the issue, that sounds like a very quick and easy way to meet the objective that, and the quote, the problem we're trying to fix. I think my personal view is the more, we make it complicated and have people sign up, and then you've got data management and who's maintaining the data. I don't know, and on other subtopics, we've had discussions about giving residents passes, and then we're now putting a process in place to maintain some sort of identification of who's a city resident and who's not. That puts burden on the city staff. There's a cost to that, and if it's as simple as a field in an app, I think we're going to find out, at least from an app's view, we're going to have a lot more residents than the census says we have.
I'd like to see the residents get priority, but I think that if we can meet this first tier objective of under 15 minutes and get the data to see if that can be accomplished, and if it's not being accomplished, then I think we can work on a parallel track to figure out how we can ultimately reach that goal of getting resident priority. But I think we can, and one of the things is I'd like to move forward with it because I really don't like the PSTA transportation. I don't. I think it's almost not safe to ride a bike anymore. These people are on Gulf Boulevard. These people are telling us they won't even do a loop because there's not a place to stop, and they're going to get rear-ended, and we're going to lose 5 people all at once instead of 1. So, I'm comfortable with the commitment as long as we keep working towards the goal of residents' priority, and also taking into consideration as we go forward, non-residents who are staying at the hotels, are we giving the hotels free rides for their guests? And should they be subsidizing this freebie service? Especially if they're not going to be putting their own electric vehicles on the road to be running their folks to some of the local places. I understand some of the places want to be all-inclusive, but everybody likes to venture out. And if they're not going to hoof it, they might take the freebie. And so what kind of buy-in are they having on the freebie? But I would like to move forward with it, with us continuing getting data regularly, and I don't know how regularly everybody needs it, but I think we need an update from May for sure. Yellow and blue circles with, the setup was great, and we just need the new data to fit into the fields.
Yeah, and I would be happy when this comes back with the amendment for that, to have freebie present, whether virtually or here, to be able to answer the questions specific to that. They have been very positive to work with in the short time that I've had some meetings with them to move forward with it. So I think they were willing to work all of this out, but there's so much complication in the resident, as we just discussed, different things that are involved in that I don't think we're ready with that right now. But if you want some additional service for our peak season that's coming up after the first of the year, we need some direction tonight on which one of these you would prefer, so we can come back to you and get something in writing with them in January, so we're ready to go in February.
But appreciate the ask, but are we also then committing to the 2 years additional service?
That would be something for you all to discuss.
But the staff write-up says that if we do that, we have to maintain the $30.
That's their ask.
To maintain the $30. 'Cause I think we had previous discussions where the previous city manager told us basically leave it alone because on the electricity, to remind everybody, leave it alone because if we open the contract, they'll go to $39.
Right, and the electricity is
We don't,
$2,700 a year for 4 vehicles to charge.
based on an estimate because we don't meter it.
What's that?
Based on an estimate because we don't meter it. But it's neither here nor
That came
there.
from Duke Energy that meters it.
So we do have separate meters.
No, it was an
No, I
estimate
think-
based on the wattage of the battery and the amount per
Peace.
kilowatt
I mean, it's neither here nor there. We don't want to go down there again.
Well, I'm good with this in concept. I'm also good with trying to find a way to get residents priority, but I think we ought to move ahead. This has been a good system. And I'm fine with going with the additional 2 years, especially when them keeping the rates where they're at.
And I think the four during the high season may be the way to go, because I think we get more data that way. If we do the 4 on the high season instead of just 2 more for annually. And then we start really drilling down if we can do it every 3 months and update the data. I don't know how everybody else feels about 4 versus the 2 annually,
like
but I think we get more data on 4 during the high season.
I think you get more bang for your buck. I mean, I think if our ultimate goal is to get below 15 minutes, I think we're definitely going to have a better stab at achieving that if we do the 4 vehicles during high season.
Do we have data on the usage numbers by
Yeah.
month?
This season is February to May is the peak. And that is, our ridership is through the roof once that happens. And then it dies down quite a bit.
Okay.
And when does it die down?
In the summer, June, from what I can see.
So then
Again,
why are we not doing January through June? Because January's going to be busier than July.
Oh, I think it was February.
Yeah, I'm asking why are we not
February through
doing-
July. I think we see a spike in July, from what I can see. Again,
Is that one
the
weekend
answer.
or?
With the holidays and things of that nature.
Yeah,
A lot of people were using freebie in July.
So what are the numbers January versus July?
January, we're pretty low. That's wait time, sorry. I don't know
That's
what I'm
okay.
looking at.
While this is loading. So, do you want me just to tell you the numbers by month?
Yeah, just raw numbers by.
Okay,
like,
so
June
October,
versus July.
starting in October of '22, almost 8,000 riders. November, a little over 8,000. December, barely 7,000. January, 8,500. February, 9,100. March, 13,800. April, 12,000. May, 9,500. June, 10,000. July, 11,000. August, 8,000. And September, 8,000.
Okay, thank you.
Wow. Compared to our PSTA numbers,
It doesn't even come close.
yeah.
Well, I think it,
Wow.
you know, it seems like the consensus by the commissioners is to move forward with this.
Okay.
I will ask that we get an answer from the freebie service provider,
Sure.
what it would take for them to code the system. It's technology. There's got to be a way. I hear all of the objections, but, you know, you have the ability to leverage technology to do something here beneficial to our residents. They should be able to provide us with an answer that says, here's how we can do it. We can't be the only city that that's had this question. And so,
It seems like it's,
I would be shocked if we were the only ones who've ever said.
yeah. I downloaded the app so long ago, I can't even remember what I had to put in, but
Yeah.
if you put in your address, now, given some people might not put in their correct address, but I gotta believe most people are gonna hopefully put in their correct address.
yep.
Maybe it's as simple as that. I mean, I don't know.
And I've used it in other cities, and I was charged $1 or $2, whatever it was. So,
Mayor, we can talk with them, like Jennifer said, we'll have to bring a contract back.
Yeah.
Excuse me, so we can talk with them about the options we have and how we can do that when we.
Yeah. And what it costs, because anything can be done for a cost.
yep.
And then we can decide, are we going to invest in that or
Exactly.
not?
I would just hate to hear that the, you know, ridership is 75 residents, 25 visitors, or vice versa, and then because of that, let's say it's 80% visitors and 20% residents, and we decide to give priority, and all of a sudden now they lose out on the contract because we don't need the extra vehicles if we prioritize residents. I mean, that's,
It's a good question.
We need data there.
we need data. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question we have, though, that we really need clarification on is, should we come back with the peak season, extra in peak season, or the extra year-round? I think that's really the one question that we.
I think the consensus
Heard
is
Peak season.
Four during peak.
Based on the numbers we heard, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
At least as a start.
Yep.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, public comments? Okay.
Thank you. John Kurzman, Bay Honda Way, not beach stewardship. I have the slide from the May meeting. Some of these questions didn't get answered, and it might help. One of the questions was they measured vehicles, and then I think we pointed out what they really were measuring were drivers on the road, that they had 2 cars 14 hours a day, 2 cars 10 hours a day, and they clarified that it was really drivers because they owned 4 freebies at the time. 2 of them would be charging. So in the chart, it was like 4 vehicles a day, because they have 4 vehicles. So my question is for you guys, so what are you really talking about here when you're paying by the hour? Are you paying by the hour for a driver, or are you paying by the hour for the vehicles you own? Because remember also, and this is from very early on, these vehicles are not on the road very much of their time. What I was told when Freebie just started, I had a ride successfully, and the driver told me that what she basically could do is just ride from, if she did Paso Grill to North, 4 round trips, the battery was dead. So then she could sleep 3 or 4 hours in the vehicle before she had to work again. So are we paying for that? And when you're computing this, and you say when that agreement says we're going to have this many vehicles for peak, that peak was like 3 to 10 p.m. or whatever. That's more hours than that vehicle can survive on the road. So what are you really talking about here? Are you paying for 3 to 10 at $30 an hour, or are you paying just for when it's really on the road? What are you tracking? And then the other thing I'd just be cautioning about is, like an emergency vehicle, you might be interested in when the ambulance gets to you, but you really want to know when you get to the hospital or when you get a package. I don't care, and I said this last time, I don't care when UPS picks up the package from me. I care when UPS delivers it. So when I wanted to go to Paso Grill for the parade, they picked me up in a fairly reasonable time, and maybe they were working to the metric. So what they did is they kept stopping at each hotel within 15 minutes to get people and then drop them off. But it took me so long, I missed the entire boat parade by the time I got to Paso Grill. So the metric should not purely be how quickly you pick someone up. That actually may cause harm to the overall quality of the service, as it did in my situation. You really need to be thinking about how long the trip takes too. So there's a lot more to, people work to the metrics, and sometimes the metrics can hurt us. So I'm just going to hope you could think of all that. I'd be happy to talk about it offline. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good questions.
Dana Richardson.
Hi, do I have to say my address again? Anyway, so everybody who knows me knows I'm the only person that's not a fan of the freebies. So I know I'm the oddball here, but because I come to the beach and I'm so used to using Uber, Lyft, or there's the other one, I can't remember its name now, where you just tip. So it works, and you get picked up and you're getting taken to where you're going. It's not the problem, like John said, where you're getting picked up and then you're making all these stops. Now, if we got the system to work and residents could use it and we got value for the tax dollars that we're paying for it, I would be open to it. But with all the comp plan and the new hotels and so forth, I guess you're requiring the hotels to kind of put in for transport to the airports, but why can't they maybe help supplement it too, since the majority of the ridership is the tourists, and that kind of goes back to my grading. Once again, taxpayers that pay 80% of the dollars is funding something for the tourists, and we're not getting the benefit. And that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other comments?
Thank you. Discussion item 7B, Commissioner Grill.
Thank you. It's sort of a bit of a difficult title, because I'm not quite sure what to title it. But what I wanted for us to do is have a discussion on our board members as public officials and comments and posts being made on social media that are either incorrect or I think can be viewed as detrimental to the city. And this is not something new. I've had discussions with city attorney now for several months. From time to time, we see certain individuals posting that, as an advisory board member, and all of us, we are public officials, and advisory board members and all the boards are public officials. And as we've all learned, there's never a time where you're not a public official. So I'll read as an example, and I won't mention the who, but I think this is, it was incorrect. It's not the first time. And this is, and I don't want to, preempt or for discussions that are going to come up for our scheduled December 5th meeting, but these are in some of these many dialogues that are going online about last night's meeting and the lead up to last night's meeting. So the comment says, also our emergency services, fire and EMT, are strapped and underfunded. So there is tremendous risk of preservation of life and property and liability for the city, with all the potential impact of thousands of new rooms, visitors, and cars. So I take exception to that because it's not a true statement. And we spent a lot of time just on that example in our budget reviews with the fire chief. Are you providing the level of service necessary for fire safety and life safety. And the answer from the fire chief, who I think is, just on fire, is the only one who can tell us, who's got the certifications to know what those levels should be, the answer has been yes. And we invested in the fire department. We were told, we gave the 4 head count, and we were told, I'm going to watch that. I may need to come back at the end of the year. So this is an incorrect statement to me by a public official. It's not a new comment. Excuse me, it's not a one-off. And I wanted to turn it over to the city attorney because we need to make sure that the infrastructure we have, the governmental services, the elected officials, the volunteer officials, provide an environment as A, by statute, and also B, as expected, so that our residents feel comfortable coming in front of any of our boards and any of us. We're transparent, we're neutral, there's no hidden agendas, and items like that, to me, detract from that. And I don't know how we address it, but, so, City Attorney.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. So when the new boards and committees were constituted, just like we always do, the city clerk's office, assistant city attorney and I, we hold in this room our presentation similar to the same education you're required to do through League of Cities. You all and the appointed board members and committee members are legally officials. And so we educate to sunshine law, public records, and this year we put a gigantic emphasis on ethics. And what we did was we really expressed the idea that if you want to be part of the city government, it's really important that you follow not just the city code. The city actually has its own ethics code in Chapter 2, Division 2, but you have to follow state law. And if you don't, if you want to be an advocate, and be a good advocate. There's lots of opportunity for that. If you want to be on a board or a committee, it's better to focus on the job that you've been asked to do on that board or committee. And let me just read a couple of things. The reason for that is, for example, in the code, this is the Code of Ethics for your own city, and it's titled Purpose and Policy for this. To facilitate the proper operation of municipal government by providing officers and employees who are independent, impartial, responsible to the people, and able to make governmental decisions and formulate policy within the established channels of government structure, ensure that public office and public employment not be used for unwarranted personal gain, and I'm just going to read a few more. Enhance public confidence in the integrity of municipal government. It goes on to do that. Now, personally, I think that these are great opportunities, and people are volunteering their time to be on boards and committees. There are opportunities to be part of this whole organization, because it operates as, so there's employees and then there's citizen volunteers, and you all are, elected officials. And it only works if you follow the rules. And it becomes very difficult when you become both an advocate and you sit on a board. It becomes confusing. I know people have been coming up, and I suggested this, and I know that they've been doing this, so they're going up to the podium when they're at a meeting, they'll say, well, I'm here on my, I'm board member, but I'm here in my personal capacity. That's all well and good, but I still think that it does set up a scenario that when you go back to your committee or your board, it's already understood that you've got an agenda that you're pushing, or agendas, plural. Now, I want to also mention to you in Chapter 22, I think it is, which lists all your boards and committees, and then in each board, and under each board and committee, it lists qualifications, okay? One of those qualifications is the city commission shall appoint only those persons whose personal and private interests are not likely to conflict with that of the general public. So what we tried to stress when these boards and committees were constituted was that people were going to only trust the government if there's some integrity and there's some commitment to being part of this organization. And it does become difficult when your board members or committee members choose to, and it's whether, I don't follow a lot of social media, but this is more general, but whether it's right or wrong, you know, I think you've got, I've always said to them that you've got to be careful. You know, choose whether you want to be an advocate, be a good advocate. There's some really smart people in this city. I know that for a fact. They were here last night. I was so impressed with the comments and statements that I heard. And these are people that are going to ultimately, you know, possibly learn about government and maybe want to run someday. And, you know, that's how local governments work and thrive. And this whole code of ethics, the state code of ethics, all of this stuff is all meant to deliver a sense of integrity and trust and transparency in your government, because inherently people are suspicious of government. But these ethical codes and procedures, and also the qualifications that they have to meet in order to be on the boards and committees, are written for a reason. Now, I do think that if somebody wanted to file ethics complaints against some people that are both advocates and board or committee members, you know, they could. I don't know if it would go the distance, but I don't want to have to defend that and have to go to them and say, okay, here's what we have to do, because they're technically, like, you're my client, they're also my client. You know, I have to, like, work with them, and it's difficult when they're doing both things. And both things are valuable. Advocacy is valuable. Serving on a public board or committee is also valuable. I think it's very difficult to do both.
I just want to clarify one thing, and I'm sorry. I am not suggesting that we curtail anybody's First Amendment rights. People have the right to say what they want, but I didn't say that.
That's why you have a choice between doing one or the other.
I just wanted people free to say what they want, whenever they want. So, sorry.
So, to your point, we have this body of
law,
administrative law, that supports keeping people inside the rails. You and I have had to operate under the rules regulating the Florida bar for 30 years.
Yep.
There's tons of gray area. There's a lot of reluctance to pursue claims, ethics complaints, those types of things. So I say, what are the practical things we can do without stepping on First Amendment rights? What is our real objective is probably, first and foremost, to the Vice Mayor's point, keeping the misinformation out of the public stream in an advocacy type on these social media platforms. I don't think we should ever be keeping people off social media platforms because I don't want to affect their First Amendment rights. But I do think that with regards to being on a social media platform when you serve this city, the only business you should be discussing is what, where, and when. We're having a meeting, come to the meeting. Please look at the city's website. The mayor says we have no public information officer and we have a storm, and this is where to get your sandbags. Things of that nature. That's the kind of stuff. And then I think we, as commissioners who are in charge of ourselves and our own behavior, need to adhere to the behavior that we're expecting of others, but then we need to start looking at our board appointees and making sure that they are upholding all of the ethics. And I'm willing to take responsibility for all of my board appointees and talk to them on a one-on-one basis. If there's anything that's untoward, or I think it's even in a gray area of ethics, and we have the authority to remove them from these boards if their behavior is such that we think it's crossing the line. But I think a policy that we should not be communicating other than what, where, when, why, what or where. This is happening, this is when it's happening, things of that nature. We really, on social media, and when it comes to city business, really shouldn't be, I don't think, talking a whole lot more about it.
I don't. So a couple of items. One on the board member speaking in public meetings, and then with their disclosure, I'm a board member, but here speaking on my behalf. I think every time I've seen that happen, since I've been in office 8-9 months now, has been when the board member spoke on an issue not related to their appointment. So for example, today Mr. Kurzman was here. He spoke about the freebie. That's not a beach stewardship committee issue. And so almost in every one of those situations, it wasn't a beach issue, it was something completely different. I don't really see an issue with a board member being able to speak on other issues and say, here are my thoughts. Yes, I serve on the finance committee, I serve on the planning board, I serve on this. Today I'm speaking on something not related to my official capacity, but rather on this issue. Because, again, to Commissioner Grill's point, you have First Amendment issues. I don't see how we can, in any good faith, curtails people's ability to speak. I think people should use more discretion, and I think that's conversations we can have one-on-one with those board members. And if I have any, please let me know. I'm not on social media that much. I can, speaking for myself, I think what Commissioner Marone said is very good advice. If you look at any of my Facebook stuff or anywhere else I post, it's here's what happened, here's a without any commentary as to what my opinion is on what happened, but just this is what happened. We have a meeting here, we have a meeting here, here was an event, here's some pictures, and so on. Rarely do you find commentary. On the other hand, there may be times where commissioners do provide opinion, for example, when they endorse candidates for office, right? That is not a, here's Bob's meeting for, he's running for county commissioner or so on, but rather, so now you're using the pulpit of your office to further something that may be in opposition to other commissioners, or maybe in opposition to some board members, or what some residents might think. So I think there's circumstances where that does happen, and I agree with Commissioner Grill, and I've seen some of the comments, and I just don't. I look at it and say, how is that helping, right? And then you have a conversation with that individual and say, look, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And how is that helping furthering, as one of the things said in the code of ethics is making sure that we, portray the city but I don't know that how do we fix the problem without saying, this is what you can say, and this is what you can't say, and then we run into First Amendment issues. I don't see how we can. I think the way that we fight misinformation is with better information, right? So if somebody says something that's incorrect, then the response should be, look, here's the correct information, right? Rather than trying to shut that person down and quiet them, let's give good information. Right? Here's what's actually happening, right? And then, if that's one of the situations, then we can have a staff report. We can, we do those at the end of every commission meeting. Say, look, here's some more background. Maybe, I think maybe that comment referred to the fact that we had to hire an additional. Yeah, so maybe the chief said it'd be nice for us to maintain our current level of service if we had additional, and then it was brought to the commission. The commission said yes, and we approved that, and we added to the budget, and now we're back at, I don't know what the background of that comment was, but the way that we fight, misinformation is with better information and not by shutting the speech down and saying, you can't talk about this, you can't say this. I do wish people would use more and better discretion. I don't have a good answer. I recognize the problem. I don't know what the right solution is.
I would just say, I mean, because I just feel that if you're serving on a committee or a board, you're somewhat of a team. Your colleagues, you're working together towards whatever the powers and duties that have been granted responsibilities under the code. And in my view, you know, when I read these, and they're very similar to the state statutes, so these are laws, these are just not whimsical things, and they're clearly trying to enhance public confidence in the integrity of municipal government. So I'm just letting you all know that if there ever is an ethics complaint against an official, it's going to be my responsibility to have to deal with that and represent that. And so I'm just pointing it out only because if it escalates and continues, where your power is that these are your appointees, and it says that in order to be on there, they can't have public, personal or private interests that are not likely to conflict with that of the general public. And so they're choosing by their, so when we talk about First Amendment rights, that's all well and good, but you're also, they're choosing to be part of a team, an organization, and to follow the law. And so when you do that, you also give up some of your rights, just like you all are under incredible scrutiny with what you have to report and what you have to do, the records retention. It's serious. I mean, it's serious. And the collective result is, are people, is the integrity going down or up, or are you maintaining it? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying what you need, what you should or shouldn't do, but I'm just, we'll continue to do it every year. We'll, just like you all do your education, we'll educate the boards and committees. You know, there were some people when we talked about this that did decide not to be on a board or a committee because they preferred to be advocates, and I respect that tremendously. You know, just like I respect people that donate their time and effort to be on a board or a committee. It's not easy.
And I think as commissioners, we all have the ability to pick up the phone and call any
You absolutely do.
of the board members, not just our own appointees. We have discretion of replacing our own appointees, but, you know,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
from my perspective, feel free to call. Let me know if, call them. You know, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Next, we have item 7C, Commissioner Marone.
Yes, I wanted to have the city attorney update us on the beach renourishment, and just so the residents understand, I'm distinguishing this from that of the county's building of the sand dunes. This is different. This is going back to what we've been discussing for the last probably 4 months, which is the Army Corps of Engineers giving us beach renourishment, dredging out there, hopefully for the next 40 to 60 years if we can get them to do it, and the easement issue that stands in our way of getting the work done.
Okay.
So I wanted to, we haven't updated that in a while, but I know that the city attorneys have been working behind the scenes with the interested parties, including the Army Corps and the county. So I kind of wanted to see if we could get this on a, maybe on a track going in a certain direction.
Okay. So as you know, the beach, so the Army Corps really has to, it's federal funded, there's funding there. So the Army Corps has rules and regulations on doing beach renourishment. There seems to have been a shift, unfortunately, with how the Army Corps was looking at how they permit. I mean, they were willing to, for a long time, they were willing to, where there were not, where there was no ability to get easements behind certain properties, they were able to, skip over that. But the federal offices in DC have decided to firmly implement the policy that you have to have easements in place for the benefit of the public, roughly, because since you're using federal dollars to do renourishment. So long story short, there's a lot going on. We organized a meeting at your instructions on September 29th. Here at City Hall upstairs, we had I think a very productive meeting, and it included the representatives from the Army Corps of Engineers, Pinellas County, members from Silver Sands condominium, because that's where the sticking point is that the Silver Sands has property that's beachward and behind, like seaward of its upland property is dunes and vegetation and so forth, and that's where the Army Corps wants some part of that under an easement, not all of it, but some part of it under an easement, and they will not go forward with the beach renourishment anywhere in the city until they get that. There was really good conversation during that meeting, I think. Ideally, I would like to be able to, I mean, and I know the county is working to try to solve this problem from a higher level, to maybe try to go back to what I'll say is a more flexible, I guess in Florida, the Jacksonville office was being a little bit more flexible with that rule about the easements. So I know the county's working on that, and if they solve the problem, then wonderful, we're good to go. But from our point of view, Matthew and I have been trying to put together pieces of this, this multi-headed problem, and our ideal, besides the county solving the problem, the ideal situation would be for us to be able to get into an agreement with Silver Sands where they understand that we need to get this easement in place so that Army Corps could go forward. I believe that we heard their concern, which is they don't want the public up in their vegetated area on the dunes. And that, when I'm talking about vegetated area, we're talking about sea oats, sea grapes. It's a really unfriendly place to be. I don't know why the public would be up there, but I understand they don't want that. One of the things that we communicated to Silver Sands was that we actually have codes in our own code of ordinances that prohibit any destruction of those dunes and vegetation, and there's state laws as well. And Matthew contacted Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and we got samples of what they would permit as far as like if we wanted to have part of that agreement in exchange for the easement, we would be, let's corridor off this with either sand fences or ropes. And, they do have 2 pathways there from their condominiums down to the beach that I believe that we could permit, a fence and gate system so that, we essentially they would not, they would have almost a cooperative effort of the city and Silver Sands working together to protect that area in exchange for getting part of that under an easement. It's not the whole area. Now, I will tell you that there's been a recent development. We were informed about a case over in Brevard County, where Brevard County, their coastline is Indian Atlantic Beach and similar type of barrier island situation. Very almost identical fact pattern where they had some private landowners holding out where they weren't giving up easements, and the Corps' new policy was stopping the need. So the Corps, they actually went into court under the Florida statute powers of eminent domain, which local governments have the ability to do that under a process. And the case was actually for condemning or eminent domain of just the easement, not taking the property, but just getting an easement. And that ultimately ended up in $171,500. That's what the county had to pay for that easement. And the court did recognize the necessity for federal funding for beach nourishment as a necessity, which is a legal term in the statute to use for eminent domain. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is that it's kind of a game changer in the sense that when we were originally thinking about, because I have to, as your lawyer, think about what are all your options? What are all your legal options? Whether you want to use them or not, I've got to give them to you. I got to tell you what they are. And obviously, eminent domain, when I first started this process, I'm thinking like, oh my God, they're talking about that whole section behind Silver Sands. It's going to be millions of dollars. And it turns out it's just part of the area. And there's now precedent, although I will tell you it's under appeal in the second district, I think?
The fifth.
Fifth district, yeah, fifth district. And we are following it, but it's a much different animal when you're talking about, an area that's smaller than what Brevard County condemned for, and they're condemning the easement, not taking the property, they're just getting an easement. It's a much different scenario in my mind, anyway, financially, because you're not taking their property, you're just taking part of the bundles of rights that you have in your property by getting an easement. And I'm pretty sure that the Corps doesn't really want to level that whole area and make it public. I think they have historically, they showed us historical maps of how they came up with that easement line, and none of it goes past the CCCL or their seawall area. It just slopes up. So it's all in the area that they're not able to use anyway. They're not able to build on it. They're not able to use it as calculating density. So to me, it just seems, hopefully, and this is just an update because we're still working at this problem. We're chipping away at it. That we can enter into an agreement with them to execute the easement for the Corps. And the last thing I'll tell you is that the Corps was very adamant to expressing to Silver Sands that they needed to understand that if they didn't get this easement, and this was not a federally funded Corps authorized renourishment, that when another storm comes by and they lose their beach, the Corps is not going to show up to rescue them, but they will if they have the easement. And so there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle moving. I think we're making progress. I thought the dialogue was open and honest and informative. We're moving forward with that. I'll mention if any of you all have different or better information than I have, definitely pass it along, because this is a big topic and there's new things, but I don't have any reason to believe that I'm wrong on any of these things. Matthew's been way involved in this, personally talking with Silver Sands Council, with the county attorney's office and members at the Corps. So do you have anything else? Did I miss anything?
That's a good summary. I just want to add just big picture here for the public, because I just want to portray kind of what we've done from when Kelly came in and kind of dropped the bomb on us, like,
And
hey,
that's Kelly Levy from
Kelly Levy from the county, where we all thought we were making progress, and then out of nowhere she came into this meeting and said, hey, by the way, this isn't moving forward. So at that point, I think the commission was very clear here, and we made it a top priority for our office. So I went to not only did we have the September 29th meeting, but there was an Army Corps meeting that they eventually heard from the public and showed up. I think some of you were all there over in, I believe, Indian Rocks. And the head official for the Army Corps for the Jacksonville office was there, Corporal General, one of the higher ranks. And he explained things, and he really clarified some of the misconceptions here, where this policy was something that was in place from the beginning of time. Right? Everyone thinks it's a policy change, but his reasoning here was they were letting things slide in certain areas, and Florida having all of the, the coastline that it does on the east and west coast. Jacksonville office was kind of making decisions on its own to say, okay, we don't need to renourish here, we'll take a temporary easement, so on and so forth. But the policy's been in place. So, we've been talking to the county. Kelly went up to DC. I mean, she's trying to work things to changing the public use language, but when you think about a big picture and you think, okay, you are trying to change a federal government's interpretation of something when they've been interpreting this for 50 years. I mean, we don't guarantee things one way or another. We just go off of realities here, and I don't know how realistic that option is at the end of the day, if I'm being honest. We have countless contacts. My main purpose of going to that meeting, and yes, I did ask a few questions, was not to just take notes. I went there with one mission, which is get a contact at the Army Corps. This is my one opportunity to meet someone face to face and create a relationship with them, and that's what we did, right? We have the project manager who we can email and text anytime, and she'll respond to us, and she coordinates with us, and she's always really checking in with us on an update, because our city is way better off than every other city in Pinellas County, and that's the truth. Madera Beach, Indian Rocks, all these other, I mean, you're talking hundreds of easements that they are required to get in order for this project to be completed. We are talking about 3 easements, and our project is fully completed. And the agreement that the Army Corps has with the county was just extended, so now we're not talking about sand into 2060. We're potentially talking about sand into 2080, 2090, well beyond all of our time here. The city will be fine if an emergency comes in. And I think there's a misconception with what just happened out at Paso Grove, because the reality is the county initiated that because we don't have the easements and the Corps couldn't, right? I mean, that was kind of a default onto what occurred, and I'm happy that they did it. But if you think about the funding for the entire county project, for every city in the county, we're not talking 25 million, which I think the email, I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to do, and realistically, the county doesn't have the funding to do so. So I think it's important to keep these communications open, but I also think it's important to realize that eminent domain even came up for the county as well, and there's just too many easements they have to obtain. Brevard County was a different situation because they had been getting easements well beyond just this year, right? In 2018, they were getting perpetual easements, so they had been kind of building an arsenal of easements where they were left in a situation where they only had to get 10 to 12 more, right? 2 to 5 more. We're in that position now, right? So we're not persuading one way or another, but like Andrew said, I think from what we heard from the commission was this project's got to get done. That's what we took it, right? There's no way out. There's no way we don't get this done.
No beach means we don't have to worry about hotel rooms. We don't have to worry about cars. We don't have to worry about anything because we won't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the benefit of Silver Sands right now, I mean, they don't have a sand issue, right? Because all the sand erodes from Paso Grove and washes up on their beach. But I mean, the moment that sand stops being filtered into Paso Grove, the erosion stops, and all of a sudden the beach starts going back and back and back until, and I'm not here to like scare anyone, but the reality is that's just what happens with beach communities, right, is erosion, and sometimes you get the benefit of accretion, right? I've gained land because I'm on. So we just want to make it clear that we're working this. I mean, Andrew's, you know, this is a priority for us. We'll continue to provide you updates, but at this point, I think our contacts need to be directly with Silver Sands, because all 3 easements are each of those condos. And, you know, the county, we're keeping them updated. They're doing their own thing. And like Andrew said, if tomorrow DC changes their mind, awesome. Project completed, work done, and now we can move on. But if not, you know, I think we need the authority to kind of continue to doing what we're doing and exhausting these avenues until we either reach a solution or we have to make a decision on how to proceed.
Right.
I'd like to give the city attorneys the tools in their toolbox to at least pursue a strategy. And then if they come to a point where they've made a decision on the ultimate strategy, that they discuss it with us.
Well, obviously, we can't go forward. Yeah, we can't go, we're not permitted to do take any legal action without your green light, so that would never happen, but.
I'm just kind of articulating it in a public setting so that residents know that there'll be a process.
Yeah, definitely a process. But the beauty of this is that we're not talking about that they want to protect their dunes and vegetations just as much as we do, because our code says to do it. So if we could just, it's a win-win situation here. And I hope we can convince them of that. And, you know, where there's not going to be, I mean, we have the power to enter into an agreement to say, you know, let's get the FDEP permits we need to have a nice barrier so it's attractive and stuff, but also enlist in a partnership with the city to manage and protect, you know, keep the public off of that vegetation that's native vegetation that's exotic and protected by state law and under our own code. So I'm hoping that we can, that's the next steps that we're going to take right now with that. Hopefully that'll work.
I think it coincides with what Wayne's efforts down in your district, right? I mean, we just got new dunes, talking about sand fencing, talking about post and roll, talking about things about signs up there, maybe informative signs, things that we could just take across our 4 miles of beach so that we can preserve what we need to, because it's easy to say you don't need anything when there's no emergency, right? But when the emergency hits and you have no sand, you want them to respond quickly. And at that point, I'm not going to say it'll be too late, but it'd be nice to have all these ducks in a row.
So I contacted Silver Sands. It's in my district. I contacted them this week for an update, and I'm waiting for them to come back. It's been about a month since we had the meeting. So what are the next steps? What are you thinking? Is there a path, an amicable path we can go down to create a win-win situation so that for all of us, can move this forward? Because we're all anxious to get this moving in the right direction.
So you're coordinating between them and council?
I made a call yet, and I'll see who comes back to me, whether it's council or what. But yes, for most certainly, our council I will be roping in.
Yeah, so I think the next step really is just to try to coordinate a meeting between Silver Sands and the city, and have city manager there, us there, because we've already opened a dialogue with, you know, their lawyers were there as well as their membership, and you know, they'll remember the conversation we had on the 29th, because it wasn't, you know, no, go away, we're never, ever. I didn't hear that. I mean, I heard, like...
No, they wanted to cooperate, but like everyone's issue with this policy is public use. Everyone's issue is public use. So it was the same thing that we've been hearing, but they seem cooperative. And I just think that I'm very, you know, positive thinking guy. There's a solution here. We just kind of have to find it, and we may have to work hard and roll up our sleeves, but I think there's a benefit to both the city and Silver Sands.
Right.
And we just got to meet in the middle somewhere.
Well, I appreciate you all getting us this far.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. All right. Next we have reports. City Clerk.
This is the final week of qualifications for Districts 1 and 3. That ends on Friday at noon. So I'm working through that. I did have a few people that pulled books, and I've had conversations with. One person did qualify as of today. So I'll keep you guys posted on that as it progresses. The next thing I wanted to talk about was I attended the Serrata meeting yesterday, and When we receive public comment, my staff and I receive public comment, meaning video submissions and voicemail submissions. That is an above and beyond thing that this city does, right? And I'm happy doing that. I have no problem with that. Quasi-judicial rules are different than any other, right? People have to stand and be sworn. Applicants, staff, and public. And you guys often hear me say, even if you think you're going to speak, please stand, right? Well, that can't happen when someone submits a video or a voicemail. And I am going to post, I talked to legal and the city manager about this, I'm going to post on the website where that information lies, that this is not an acceptable way for public comment for quasi-judicial proceedings only. I'm not removing anyone's right to public comment. It still exists. It looks different for quasi-judicial. On the agendas, I will identify quasi-judicial so that the public knows. It's not easy to identify. I mean, we know, but they don't. So then that will help, and this will make people familiar with it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is...
A quick question
Oh,
on
I'm
that.
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I know, for example, at yesterday's meeting, the chairman said, are there any comments not related to this thing?
Yeah.
Just to avoid any situation where somebody submits something and is like, oh, my comments didn't get played or didn't get heard, and now I lost my ability. In the absence of somebody, well, if somebody submits something, could we play it before the quasi-judicial, just in the regular standard public comments like we do with anything else, and say, here's your comments, but these are just public comments that have nothing to do with the quasi-judicial part?
I'd say no. What's really important in a quasi-judicial hearing is the record, because the record has to be made, and then that's the record, and it has to stop right there. And in addition, comments that's really testimony, from the public, that's unsworn, unvalidated, and doesn't give either of the parties, whether it's me or counsel for the applicant, the ability to examine them if they wanted to. So let's say that they have someone says, I'm a civil engineer and this and this and this and this, and it's testimony that is unfair, it's prejudicial to, because the parties in a quasi-judicial is the city and the applicant, and they have a high, their rights to be able to manage the testimony and have it done under oath is regarded as high. Now, I have seen some jurisdictions just to allow that, but it's rare. I think the better way is to just say, the public comment. First of all, there wouldn't be much weight to that. Like if I were an attorney in a courtroom, I'd say, okay, objection, that's just out of court statements, that I have no ability to question that witness. And that's kind of the theme of that. So that's exactly, that's kind of how I'm feeling about that, having people record things and just...
Can you give a preemptive that, the commission is not to consider any of these comments or statements that are being made for the purposes of this quasi-judicial proceeding?
I can do that. There's no doubt I can do that. Again, this is an education. That's why I'm offering to go places and to talk to people about quasi-judicial hearings. Because we do have them quite a bit at the Board of Adjustments and things like this. But the Serata, the other ones that you're going to see are high stakes, quasi-judicial, very... And I'll tell you, to be honest with you, I thought that was a very good meeting. It was long, yeah, but it brought a lot of people out. A lot of people made a lot of really good, smart comments, and I thought a lot of it was good layperson testimony. And, I didn't, whenever you get that many people in one room, you're always going to have some chatter and some stuff, and you're going to have to, please no clapping. But I think on a scale of 1 to 10, the community was great, like maybe as far as like, disruptive, I think it was like 2 out of a 10. I would say that was a very good meeting, even though it was long. But if I do a preemptive, clearly someone's going to think like, okay, the city attorney has told us that, these people's testimony is worthless. And that's not what I would be saying, of course, but I have to control it. I mean, I'll do that, but I'm more concerned about just due process for everybody, and making sure that the record is clean and clear so that there are no missteps in the process, whichever way it goes, whether it's a denial, an approval with conditions, whatever. I mean, I just want to make sure that the process is clean and clear, because I've seen a lot of these things go to court, and the only thing the judges see is the transcripts. They're not at the hearing. They only read the transcript. So and there is a court reporter here usually, and you want that to be really clear, not chopped up and messed up and things like that. It makes it hard if for some reason, like I had to defend an appeal, But yeah, I could do that. I'm happy to do it. I mean, but I just want everyone to understand. I really am serious. I'll go to community meetings, public meetings, whatever, if I start talking about quasi-judicial, if that's what it takes to get people comfortable with what I say and not take it out of context and, malign anything I say.
I was really thinking more in terms of the vast majority of our quasi-judicial hearings are not a single issue hearing like last night or the one next month.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes it's, item number 7 or 8 of the evening.
Yeah.
There's nothing to stop somebody from coming in during the public comment section, which is the first thing that happens. They can speak on whatever issue they want. They can speak on that issue, and that wouldn't be part of the record.
It would definitely not be part of the record.
And so what I'm saying is in situations where we have videos or voicemails, move them to the public comments section at the beginning of the meeting rather than as part of the quasi-judicial. So we can add that disclaimer, for example, to the quasi-judicial agenda and say, look, if you're going to leave a voicemail or whatever, it will not be played during this item. We'll play it at the public comments, and then it's not, so that we're...
Wait, I'm sorry, just for clarity, is it on a different subject or on the quasi-judicial?
I think what the mayor's suggesting is that let it be played, let it happen during the open session of the meeting, but make sure that they understand it's not going to be part of the record.
The opening audience
so basically the city
subject.
The city would be stipulating on the record that this is not part of the record. You can play it. It's basically worthless as far as like testimony.
But my main concern was simply that somebody may not read all of the, or be able to tell the difference between, okay, this one's a quasi-judicial, this one isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then the city clerk receives a video or a voicemail, and we decide that we're not going to play those. And then we have questions from our residents. Hey, I submitted my video. How come it didn't get played? This way we can say, well, it did get played. It just got played here because it didn't meet the standards for the quasi-judicial.
I'm okay with that. I can't guarantee you that a private attorney coming in here representing an applicant wouldn't object to that.
Sure.
But that's okay. I'm okay with, as long as there's disclaimer and it's understood that it has no value to the quasi-judicial process because it's going to be outside of the record, and they can't then go into court and say, I have standing now because I made a comment at a public hearing and it was played and I'm going to file an appeal.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be our position that, it's outside the record and it was never, they didn't.
Would it be any different than anyone that made comments tonight or at the last meeting or any other meeting on behalf of any of these subjects that might come up in the future? We're not going to go back and include today's comments in a future meeting.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, these, they're being talked about tonight. And I mean, if I had it my way, I would shut it down. I mean, if it were me as a lawyer, just being that way, I would say, let's not talk about that because that's an item that's a quasi-judicial item. It's scheduled for a hearing, shouldn't be talked about. You guys are quasi-judges. You need to remain impartial, etc. But it's hard to control everything. I mean, I quit trying to control the whole world 20 years ago. It's too hard.
City Clerk, just for clarity, so is it then, it's Florida statute for quasi-judicial hearings? Is it Florida statute that requires people to be here, physically be here so they can be sworn in? Is that?
Well, I mean, the concept is they have to be sworn. Like, I need confirmation. I need to look you in the face and see that you swore your hand and you looked me in the eyes and acknowledged what I said to you. That's the idea. But you can't do that when you're on video.
No, I understand. I just
voicemail.
Agreed, absolutely.
Isn't there a right to cross-examine also?
Yeah.
So how is that possible?
It's not possible.
That's the,
That's what I'm saying, it can't be considered.
yeah.
It's a witness that I can't examine.
Right. I mean, I don't see how it's even possible to do it.
All right.
Okay.
But I'm willing to be flexible if you play it during the general comment section and there's a disclaimer and they understand that this is not part of the record. And we just know that there might be an attorney that is aggressive and wants to say, like, I object to that and put it in the record. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, quasi-judicial hearings are, they're messy. They can be messy. That's why I talk about, like, I'm just trying to control the process here. Because at the end of the day, that transcript should read really nicely, as opposed to a butchered, product. Because you lose cases that way.
Yep. City Clerk, you had a few.
Yeah, so, I mean, you guys saw that it was a 6-hour meeting yesterday, so I just wanted you guys to keep that in mind when we have our meeting the 5th at 6 p.m. So just be prepared for that. And what else was I going to say? Oh, and it is here at City Hall, so we will make sure that we have enough seating because there is requirements. So I'm going to make sure there's enough chairs per code, and then other than that, I mean, I don't really know what else I can do.
I'm sorry, you said at City Hall?
Mm-hmm.
This is the December 5th meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys have another place where you wanted to have it?
We did not have enough. Well, I mean, we do have the community center available.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that may require IT to figure out how to record and broadcast it, but we did not have enough, never mind chairs. There were at least 30, 50 people outside that couldn't get into the building, and this was for a planning board hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And besides, I mean, you look at our demographic, there was a lot of individuals that should have been sitting that weren't able to sit. We had a lot of people walk out because they couldn't stand around anymore after 5 hours. I wonder how many public comments we lost because they walked away because they couldn't even get inside the building and we couldn't even collect their comment cards. So we need to find a better solution. I don't think having it here is serving the public.
I'm willing to do whatever you all decide. I have no real strong opinion, but you do need to understand the community center echoes. So decorum needs to be very tight because I'm sitting in this audience and I can't hear the speaker here. I'm literally here because there are people back there. And I understand that you all are very good about decorum, but you need to really recognize that this community center echoes back. That's first. Second is IT is not capable of live streaming from there in the way that it is done now. Okay, I'm not saying that it cannot happen, but it cannot happen the way that it is done now. So you have, the residents need to understand that if they do this, they're not going to get this. If they do this, they're not going to get this. So they can have it at the community center, possibly have a seat, but it's going to compromise the people viewing at home and the recording that's possible. You have it here, you're going to compromise having a seat and being comfortable, but still have the live streaming. Okay, so that really needs to be understood. I'm not saying that it cannot happen, just saying it's going to look differently. And that has to be acceptable and understood.
So can I ask you a question? What is the Florida statute? Because we're also going to, by moving because we're anticipating, I mean, we're not selling tickets, we're not going through something like Eventbrite or having people sign up. So we're anticipating there may be more people coming than this room can hold. My understanding of the Florida statute is that we as a city need to provide a, quote, welcoming environment, and that if the room is filled, there needs to be a way for it to be broadcast outside of the room, which I'm guessing, and maybe Commissioner Frozlowski would know because his name's on the building, is on that plaque outside, on why that television and that streaming is outside in the lobby for overflow. Discuss can hold 80, we could put 80 chairs. I think the max capacity of this room, I think, is about 98, if I'm correct, 92? I don't know.
82.
100?
Yes, it's 82 seated. That counts all of you all, myself, and then it's 18 standing in this room alone.
And then that's for fire, that's for code. Correct. And then outside can hold 30 some odd.
30, I think it's 30, Jim, in the lobby. But you cannot put chairs, right, because you cannot block the ingress.
But I just wanted, that is Florida code, and we meet Florida code, not code, excuse me. That is what the law requires. Okay, so now when we have overflow, the question is, do we relocate? Because there could be another subject coming next, who knows? And how do we know in advance how many people are going to show? And because we spent, I'll use a round number, probably close to maybe $100,000 for all of the IT equipment that we have on streaming, and we do have a large number of people that watch remotely. We've been streaming on Spectrum probably 20 years, which we don't have that capability over there. So by having, and I'm just trying to be open and fair and equitable in a process that's repeatable. So now, because a lot of people want to come here because for whatever reason, we then will be at the detriment of those who are working remote. And we had a long discussion in the last meeting about remote access, I think it was last meeting or meeting before, about remote access even for ourselves, let alone from a resident's view. So it is a trade-off, because we know, and we've held these community meetings, I'll call, and no disrespect to anybody, the secondary, I call the secondary IT process with that little web camera really doesn't work very well. It works, but not well. And we all get messages, I can't see Mike Clark, I only see him from the neck down, or I can't hear really well, or they're pointing to a chart that I can't see. And I'm just concerned that we're not plumbed properly in any other venue besides here, whether it's a rec center, heck, we could rent the Mahaffey Theater. How do you draw, where do you draw the line, and how do we draw the line so that going forward it's equitable? Yes, there were a lot of people last night. We can have a process where people do get their chance to speak and speak to the commission. We have cards, numbers, some sort of system. But there's nothing that requires us for everybody to be in the room at the same time. And I'm just trying to find a repeatable process where we can deliver what's expected, because if we remember back, and I'll just pick on the Serrata meetings, they were over in the community center, and I know they spent some money, and the acoustic, it didn't work very well. People couldn't hear. I can't hear you. What did you say? Hello? And then you had side conversations as best as they tried. There was an attempt to control the decorum. And that's just going to detract from whatever it is. So I don't know the answer, but just to say we'll move it and then throw it on our IT staff, go figure it out with a holiday coming up. I don't want to set us up for disappointment and failure. My view, a little bit long, sorry.
Well, one way or the other, I think it has to be decided tonight because advertisement's got to happen. And if it's going to be in the community center, then it's got to be advertised that way. If it's going to be here, it's got to be advertised that way. You don't have another, I don't know when the next meeting is, but that's the only way you guys can talk about this, so it's got to be decided tonight.
My preference is to have it here because I think the importance in being able to effectively communicate, whether it's the parties, whether it's us, whether it's the folks that want to come in, the residents, and speak for 3 minutes, the effective communication is the most important part. That means that we can hear them and they can hear us without interruption. And people get tired as night goes on, it gets long, and things start to get, the edges start to fray. And I think we stay tighter in here than we go into a bigger space where we start losing the sound. It's more difficult to control the behavior of the folks in the room who are getting restless, albeit for good reasons. I just think I'm more comfortable here, of course, because this is very comfortable. But I just think that we have a better ability to communicate in a room like this, acoustically, and then we have very sharp live streaming that we can count on here, that the residents have been accustomed to counting on, which will be uninterrupted.
My concern would be the acoustics in the community center are terrible. I guess the only other thing I could think of is to allow a clear path for people to get up to the podium that aren't in the room. And if we just ask, the people in the room to allow for that within the, fire regulations, because that's the other thing, for people to be able to speak if they come here. I mean, they may want to just observe, but there are people that come to speak, and I think that's an important aspect of it, if they're not in the room, to allow them to get there.
The acoustics were terrible yesterday. We had multiple times where we had to redirect people to the microphone, can't hear you. It happened speaker after speaker after speaker. So there's a valid concerns, and I think, that's part of the responsibility of the person that's running the meeting, and so I'll take that upon myself to make sure that, we keep people in line, that they're orderly, that they're quiet, right? That everybody gets an opportunity to speak. My concern is it was 3-4 hours in before we even got to public comments yesterday, and I was out there helping kind of manage the crowd, and we had, again, this is just what happened. This is no judgment on any of the staff or anybody else. We did not have a process for collecting comment cards. We did not have a process of getting those comment cards. We did not have a process. You can hear them out in the lobby, but the other 30, 50 people sitting outside, there's no TV for them. So when their name gets called, they can't hear that their name got called. Not only that, but what if it's raining? And then where do those people go? So now they can't participate in a public hearing. I think whatever Florida statute says, that's the minimum standard that is required. And I think, how do we know? Well, when we had the Pass a Grill trash issue, right? We received dozens and dozens and dozens of email, and that was a direct reflection of who showed up. When I have 200-300 emails in my inbox, that gives me a really good indicator this is going to be a very popular meeting and well attended. I think, we want to make sure that the applicant has the ability to present their case, and we want to make sure that our residents have no hindrances to be able to speak their piece as well. And if we have a situation where we can't have people in here, where we have elderly who have to stand for 3 or 4 hours, as it happened many, many times yesterday, where they have to stand outside, and it was quite hot yesterday, even late in the evening. If we have inclement weather, now those people are gone. And so now we're going to lose input from our residents potentially. And so I think we should do what we can. Now, if we can't broadcast as we normally do, that doesn't mean that we do not broadcast at all. We have YouTube, you have the city website, we have the public access channel. If we utilize any one of those where we stream it and also record it, we can always rebroadcast it on the public access channel. We can always post it to the city website or to YouTube, right? So it's not that we're not going to have the live access. It just will be, as the city clerk said, it'll be different. So I'm just saying, for my part, I will do my part if we decide to have it over there, to make sure that we have an orderly process, that we maintain the quorum, right? That people can and will be heard. That's my commitment to the process, to make sure. If that means having to be, a little bit more assertive than normal and with less leeway, then that's the way what we'll have to do to make sure that everybody has a good process.
Well, there is no statutory requirement on recording meetings. There is a statutory requirement on allowing public comment. So you do need to think about that. And then I wanted to remind you of page 42 in the Sunshine Manual, where the Attorney General comments on size of meeting facilities. The Sunshine Law requires that meetings of a public board or commission be, quote, open to the public. If a large turnout is expected for a particular meeting, the Attorney General's office has recommended that public boards and commissions take reasonable steps to accommodate those who wish to attend, and there is an informal opinion issued in August of 2008. I also shared with the city attorney a case law for a St. John's Water Management District about open government moving their meeting to a larger room. That I read that case law, and it was actually really good. St. John's Water Management did go above and beyond. They moved to a room. Now they had a room that in their main campus that could accommodate 256 people. They also had 2 other small rooms that already had television for broadcasting, so it's definitely unique, not what we have here. But I did research this. It was something that I and the attorney have talked about. I mean, it is very important to us to make sure the public knows that they are welcome and that they can make public comment. We understand that it was uncomfortable for people. I personally cannot stand for that long without having to sit, so I can empathize with those people. I want to give you all of the information so that you make a sound decision.
So how do we get, if we go across the street, how do we get, I'll call it, get it plumbed so that it works? We have the AV system, we have the overhead, because sometimes we show things that we don't plan to show. Hey, as Mr. Kurzman did, hey, look at this. It's great having that the overhead viewer. That we have an AV system that can be implemented, tested. I mean, we don't own any of that. We haven't invested in that. I mean, that's why I say it's something we can we need potentially look at for the future. I don't know if there's how easy it is to rent this stuff. I mean, we're not going to buy it in a week because we're really 2 weeks away.
Well, we have overhead, we have microphones, and one of the ways, the way that the overhead is positioned there, actually just the front-facing camera would cover everything where we wouldn't have to switch back and forth like we do here.
I would just say I've been in a few meetings. There's not been a lot of meetings over in the room. None of them have worked well from a AV meeting, just being able to operate. If we can do it, great. I don't want to set us up. I'm just concerned we set ourselves up for failure. Certainly want the public to come. I'm not trying to be a naysayer, but I also don't want to do something and then we fail at it.
What's the deadline for advertising?
Thursday. I do want to tell you what IT just informed me of. So we do not have 9 microphones that can be tied into the sound system at the community center. Only one of the two PA speakers work. If we broadcast, we can only use one source and the webcam would not be viable. No presentations and no doc cam. So no presentations like you see Brandon does, the applicant does. I'm not trying to say no. I'm just saying I'm gonna have to devote my time with IT and figuring out, like you said, Vice Mayor, what to rent, what we can buy, and it's gonna be long hours that I'm willing to put in, and I know that IT would be helpful as well. It's not ideal, but I'm not saying no.
Amber, is there Wi-Fi over there? Is there internet there? It's not great, okay.
And with all that, the acoustics are still terrible. As good as you try and manage people, I'm just really concerned that people are not going to be happy with that end result. I understand trying to get more people in a room, and I agree with that aspect of it, but
I also need to make sure that you all as decision makers have the record in front of you and whatever documents are visible and able to be seen. And if that's a concern that I have, like if you're not, if it's going to turn back into like handing out paper documents and stuff like that, I don't know. It can be done. We can go back to the future.
Here's a wild idea.
The reason I asked about the internet, one second, is just because I look up I guess I'll haul a bunch of books over there, but I look up a lot of statutes and a lot of code and other things while I'm here. So that's why I asked about that.
Here's just sorry to interrupt. Just a wild idea. Is there another city that has a larger facility that might loan it out to us? For example, I was at the Big C meeting at Bel Air Beach, and it's much larger than this room, very similar type setup.
So
they have 9 commissioners. And
there is specific case law that is the Attorney General opinion is no. Like, you cannot move it to another.
Don't go to another.
Yeah, because like if
Making people travel.
you traveling, like I get what you're saying. Like Madeira Beach has a beautiful open room, right? But then you have people having to travel, and you're going to get that. Well, I don't have a car, or I'm disabled, and
okay, sorry.
now we have
I'm just
to
trying to
counter
think
that.
out of the box to try and find
I appreciate
a workable
that.
solution. Because again, I just don't want to set us up to fail by trying to be too fast. And with the holiday, that's the other problem, the holiday in the middle kind of messes it up. Okay.
I had more angry people about the lack of space than anything else yesterday. I don't get very many angry people, and that was the one thing. Can we do this, city manager, since IT kind of falls under your department? Can we tentatively schedule it, set it up for the community center? Give it IT tomorrow to do whatever research investigation that they need to do, renting equipment and so on. And in the event that they say, look, there's no way for us to feasibly do it, at the discretion of your IT department and the city clerk, we can have an emergency meeting Thursday morning and change the venue before it gets advertised. Is that a possible work?
I'm also trying to balance qualifications to Thursday. We have to have a meeting. Yeah, I could figure it out. Yeah, I will do whatever you ask me to do. I will.
I'm just proposing it as a possible solution, because if we, look, at the very least, then we can go back to the residents and say, look, we tried everything we could, right? We made calls, we looked at equipment, we looked at whatever else we needed to do. It can't be done, then that's what it is. What do you think?
So, are you leaving it up to our staff to make the decision on whether it's doable or not? Is that what you're saying, Mayor?
Well, we'd have their recommendation whether or not. So,
Make a recommendation at a special meeting on Thursday? Is that what you're asking?
well, if we can't have it at the community center, then they need to let us know it's not doable. We'll schedule a meeting Thursday morning, change venue,
Well, I think Amber described it very well, that I think, we're happy to try anything y'all want to do.
So do we have to actually have a meeting to decide where we're noticing it?
I mean, I can send out an email detailing to you all if you trust that I can do. I mean, I know that you trust that, but I'm just saying, like, I can be specific and outline with after I have a conversation. I mean, IT and I talk all the time, and
Look, we'll know by tomorrow evening. I mean, basically, we're looking at tomorrow, which is Wednesday, to do some contacts, find out what's possible, rentable, doable.
I just talked to Ryan from IT, and he doesn't think it's possible. We have minimal equipment. The mixer that he uses to even do the videos is a $2,000 piece of small equipment. We can look into it more tomorrow, but I would say the possibility is pretty limited.
My concern is we would do everything that we could possibly do, but we would still have issues.
Yeah.
That would not meet your expectations or the public's expectations of what we ought to be doing in a public meeting. That's my concern. But we'll take whatever direction y'all want us to take on it. And it's just, I wish we had 2 weeks instead of half a day, basically, to try to figure something like that out. We would be very limited in what we could do, though.
I mean, it just sounds to me like you're going to have to give up in order to obtain this satisfaction of comfortableness. You're going to have to give up the other, and sometimes you can't have everything. You just have to weigh right now. If that's the direction that the city wants to go with quasi-judicial proceedings in the future, or any, and not even just quasi, right? Anything that you're going to think is large. And that's definitely something that we want to work on for fiscal year 24 budget, right? Definitely. But for right now, that's not happening, and it's going to look different if we move it to a different facility. So it's either we have people seated and comfortable in here, or we don't. Like, you can't have it all.
I think it's just too visual a presentation, including the residents who have visuals, that I want it to work for them.
That is a concern.
I don't want them fumbling with stuff and then having to abandon what they wanted to show us.
Correct.
Because
the PowerPoints.
I've been in many, many jury trials where I watched a lawyer fumble with a piece of equipment, an overhead, or they brought their own gear and they thought they could run it, and as soon as they couldn't get it, they had to put it away and they didn't get to show that evidence. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching him. I just said, I'd shake my head. I knew he just lost half of his direct examination with his witness. He has an expert on the stand, but he can't pull it off. And that's what I don't want to happen with the residents, is that they bring something in and they can't show it to us, because we're trying to get the guy who we rented the equipment from, and he's down on his knees working on something, and it's not playing.
And that's a valid concern. I mean, I'm sure there's all sorts of equipment out there that could be rented, but configuring that equipment, putting it together, making sure it works, and then not having some glitch at the meeting is a valid concern. And I think, I appreciate Jennifer going back in the back and talking with Ryan. I mean, he is our tech guy, and if he's telling us that there's just no way to do it, then I think that goes a long way.
Then if we are gonna do it here, then I think we need to address the mayor's concerns about how we handle folks out here.
Yeah. The speaker cards too. We can make sure that we have auxiliary staff make sure they're handing out speaker cards and assisting the clerk with, shuttling them back and forth, and as Commissioner said, making a clean path to the podium. I thought it worked out well when the deputy clerk was calling 2 names at a time so that they can queue up a little bit, so that they're there, and it's not, you got to wait for everybody to make their way, like call maybe 2 or 3 names and then let them, queue up so that they're ready to go.
Here's an idea, I mean, because we do have several large resorts in this district. as the city clerk said, the priority is public comments. And I was out there, I didn't see anybody else that was out there with me. And it was a mess. And they couldn't, I had to raise my voice, and they still couldn't hear me. And there was people outside out there, there was people outside out there. We had to bring in multiple deputies to keep people out of the building. Then we had a potential fire situation. And now we have, I think we're putting ourselves in a position, and we had this conversation weeks ago about a different venue, that we needed something larger.
Well, there's
And
hotels with large conference
I am disappointed that we haven't anticipated this.
When
Because
did
that,
we have that conversation?
not you and me or anyone in this,
Okay.
with the commissioners, with
Okay, sorry.
staff.
Okay.
Right? And so, we got to find a better solution for it. I don't think it's feasible to keep it here. It's going to get ugly. I mean, we're going to have, if we have what we had last night alone, again, 20, 30 people on both sides of the building outside. Out there, you couldn't hear anything. You couldn't hear anything in here because the door kept opening for people to come in to speak. Right?
But, you know, with the speaker cards, you could put numbers on them like you do in a deli. You go to a deli and there's a long line.
But how are you going to communicate that information to them?
Well, we need somebody, you know.
Yeah, I was out there yesterday. It was.
Well, I can't speak to last night. I wasn't here. I mean, we need to have additional staff to be able to manage. Well, by the way, whether it's in any venue, it's clear we need some sort of staff. But it's like going to a concert. I mean, there are times you don't get in. I mean, it's oversold. You can't get in. What do you do?
What
We
if
could
we
definitely have additional staff to help control the comment cards and, you know, how people are lined up, so people will know, oh, I'm number 23 or I'm number 40 or whatever. I mean, we can provide staff to do that if that's the direction, if you decide you want to try to stay here. Yeah.
As opposed to calling on, hey, where's Joe? Where's Joe? Mary, you're next. Mary, get online. I don't know. Just somebody to make it easier. But how do we? I mean, it comes down to, can we get this? Where we're Tuesday, what's today's day? I'm sorry, Tuesday the 14th. You know, can we get this done for a larger venue, whatever the venue may be? So it has to be in town. There are only a few places. There's the community center. There are 2 large resorts, which I don't know if we really, well, we could rent the room, I guess. I mean, I don't think we should take something on, you know, being comped based on the fact that they'll be coming in. Sorry?
Okay, so this was an idea I was just thinking of. So we have this large TV. I asked IT if we could roll it out and set up chairs in a parking lot, weather permitting, obviously. And it is something that can happen. We can stream on the cable from that, he's pretty sure. Another option is to use if available, the blow-up screen that we have with the projector. Now, that would have to go through YouTube or Facebook where there's a slight delay. So if we're having public comment and I call someone's name, there might be a little bit of a different thing that we have to do with that. But that is an option that he and I just talked about.
Could we, just thinking out loud here, I don't want to call it a watch party, but a watch party for overflow in the community center?
And how would they make comments?
No, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Have you thought about starting a little earlier as well, maybe? You know, give yourself more time here. I mean, I have to tell you that I've been in much smaller chambers than this as an attorney, and you know, yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun to have to stand up. I get it. You also have to consider the rights of the parties here, which would be the city and the applicant. And the applicant's going to have experts, and we'll probably have experts, and we got to make sure that they've got, you know, they're accessible and they can be heard. You can hear them. So that's my concern as well. I mean, I think you have to balance it. You know, definitely, I concur with the clerk and the need for facilitating public comment. I think that's very important, but it's also important to recognize that you have parties in this hearing that also have rights and have spent a lot of money to hire experts, including the city will have its experts, and we'll want to have our staff, available to come up and answer questions. I mean, there's a lot of detail here. So if you lose the that capability for the benefit of the public's comfort, I'm not sure you're gaining anything. But
So with the large, the what do we call it, the blow-up screen, the portable screen with the speaker, I've used it, it's pretty big and it's pretty loud. In the parking lot, the problem, of course, is if the weather turns bad, then that's off and there's no plan B. I mean, that would only be for people who...
How are you going to swear people in if they're outside?
when they come up. Well, and I think that also asking people to say whether or not they've been sworn in or not when they come up, they could do that.
Because I think even today we have people who don't think about making comment, don't get sworn in, and then after we finish our discussion, they say, yeah, I want to add something. So your plan B or multiple part.
I don't always swear them when they come to the podium. I mean, I'll stand up each, I was standing when we swear people in.
That's not very efficient doing it each and every time, if we're expecting a large number. So the room holds 80 chairs?
82.
Do we expect 82 public speakers?
Or 30 last night, I think.
Those are the ones that stayed.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that stuck around.
But as with many, I don't know if it's different than just talking out loud here, for a quasi-judicial hearing, there are other times where we'll have people lined up, and the chairman is asked, if it's the same discussion point and same comment, we don't entertain, and we've gone an hour and a half, do we want to hear from 10 more people who are going to say the same thing as the previous 10 people? And you've asked them not to speak if they have nothing different to say. I'm just thinking out loud, I want to give people the right to speak, and they have the right to speak, and we want to hear from the public. But how do we do it in the most efficient way? Because if that number of people come, we could have public comment that lasts 6 hours.
I think one good idea might be to start earlier, if we could do that. If everybody's available.
You can start earlier, but you get to a point even last night where it's just...
No, I understand, but
They're going to wear out.
You're going to wear out, and there's a reason even, normal court hours start and they stop at a certain point.
Well, even if we had a bigger venue, we're still looking at that.
Yeah. Yep.
Do we dare break it into 2 parts? Is that possible?
2 parts, like 2 different days?
Yeah.
Ideally, you continue the only reason you would continue the hearing is if there was a reason for it. Like, for example...
That thing on the wall right there, the clock. That's not a good reason?
It may be, but I would say the better reason usually is if, like, you're lacking information, you're missing information.
That's not trying to, the objective that we're trying to meet is that we're trying to get as much information from everybody as possible, and we're trying to jam it into this tiny little box, and I'm wondering how we can expand the box.
So then you have a situation where does the applicant, are there experts available at the next meeting?
I know.
If you disjoint it so much, what are you going to do it a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks? We don't know whether their applicants are whether the applicants' experts are going to be available.
And how reasonable is it for us to stay here?
What?
No, I'm saying
it's reasonable. It is. These
how
are
much
big.
how long is reasonable?
I've been to meetings till 3 in the morning. I have. I've been to late night meetings, very late night meetings. I've been in chambers where I've sat all day long. It's not pretty. I know that, but you're dealing with a big project. You're dealing with a big issue. You know, it's not. Everything isn't going to be perfect or ideal. I mean, my preference is that you do the whole hearing at once, get it over with, have the record closed, and move on. That's my preference.
So the question on the table is venue, and venue size. Now we're into the second item. I think we have to, I don't know if there's a decision we need to make, is on duration. One suggestion, and I'm just throwing it out there, again, I'm not trying to take away public comment. Instead of 3 minutes, you cut it down to 2 minutes. And if you have 100 people speaking, that's a big savings in time. I mean, we are at the high end, I think, when you looked at city clerk, at other municipalities, 3 minutes.
Where I come from, my city only lost 2 minutes, and there are some cities that only have 1 minute, so 2
Okay.
minutes is very healthy.
And I'm just throwing it out there for discussion, right? How do we get this done? Some people will say 2 minutes, I can't get anything, a point across in 2 minutes, so what's the point? That's, I think, how we got the 3 here. Again, we're all getting a little cranky, it's getting late, and so I'm just trying to come up with.
I don't know that it makes much sense to try to change the established rules this late in the game.
But we have done that before in the past on multiple times. I think normally it's a call, depending on how many people you see, if you need to adjust, because, you know, I'm open to starting a little bit early, but, you know, if we start at 6 and it lasts till midnight, is that good for the public too? I mean, there's probably no perfect solution here. You have to just kind of deal with the best that you can deal with. So, I mean, there would probably be some people that would say, I'd rather have 2 minutes and have the meeting end at a reasonable time as compared to way, way past my bedtime. So I think we just need to make a decision. And
I will also say that, you know, in my opinion, I think the applicant, it went a little long in some areas, and you have the right to ask the applicant to, you know, get to the point, you know, like do that. So I don't think their presentation, unless they have other experts, needs to be as long as it was yesterday, personally. Yeah, their attorneys talked a lot.
Well, I agree with that, and that's also, there's precedent for doing that too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think probably in fairness, it'd be nice to try and establish that now, so it's not a surprise to either the applicant or the public. So I'd say probably both. I don't know how long the applicant took yesterday, but do you have any idea how long it was?
I didn't time it, but
It was 2 hours.
2 hours.
Wow.
I mean, that's really rare. I've been to hearings where
it's a long time.
They'll ask the applicant, how much time do you need? And they'll say, like, you know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you say, okay, try to stick to that.
Right.
And we'll evaluate it. But, I mean, really, the lawyers can't testify. They can argue legal issues, and I think that they'll agree to that. I think last night, for me, I just thought it was okay to just go ahead and let it run, because I think the had a chance to speak, and it aired out a lot of issues. But here in this time, there's nothing wrong with you asking the applicant to, you know, abbreviate or at least be concise, because really, you want to hear from the experts. That's what you want to hear from.
Well, it was all the experts and everything else that took 2 hours. So then do we limit the experts?
Mm-hmm. Well,
don't just, it's the whole time period. It's the way I've seen it before in the past. I mean, limit it to, I don't know what, an hour, hour and a half? I don't know what the right answer is, but I've seen it done before here and other jurisdictions. It's not unusual to
Let them craft their
to say,
presentation based on
right.
the limitations of
Right.
time.
I think that would be a reasonable thing to do, is establish that now, if that's, I don't know what it is, hour and a half, hour.
And then when do we ask questions?
Yeah, you want to make sure that you save enough time for board deliberation, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
You know, that's why you want to consider possibly reducing, I mean, if you've got 30, 40, 50 speakers, maybe 3 minutes is excessive, and just ask them to be concise, because, yeah, there was some super good commentary, but some of it was duplicated, and you just ask people, please don't, you know, like, if you want to just get up and say, I agree with that person, what they said, or, you know, that kind of thing, I mean, you know, that's fine. You can reduce the public speaking time, encourage, as you said, you know, take control of the meeting and encourage people to don't duplicate, or if you're just gonna, if you want to be heard on the record, say, I agree with what John said, or, you know, that kind of thing, and just speed it up, move it along. You know, that's what, Mr. Mayor, you would have to do, is just move things along. Because you definitely want to reserve time for your own deliberation and questions of staff.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of questions as the experts come up.
You could do that too, yeah.
But then does that take away from their allotted time? Do we have somebody sit with the clock and say, all right, the mayor asked the question, we're going to stop the clock so you can answer the question, then he can resume his presentation? I'm just not inclined to limit either the applicant or the residents. That's my personal opinion. I think they need to do, I want them to have all the time so that they can never come back, whether it's yay or nay, to come back and say, we were not given all the time that we wanted. And I also don't want to hear from the residents that we were not given the opportunity to speak, whether it's because of the venue or because of anything else.
I just want to be clear, like, I have sat through 12 hours, and I'll do it again. I will. And because of that very reason, because I agree with you. I will do that. And I'm not trying to say I won't, or that I'm encouraging that not to happen. Because this is, you know, it's tough. You have to take some breaks. People have to go, you're going to have some recesses for naturals, you know. And so I you know,
I think I can be here to start the meeting at 4:30 if everybody's agreeable to moving it to an earlier time.
Well, we don't know if their experts are available then.
True. Have we committed to 6 p.m.?
Yeah, it has advertisement. I mean,
well, they do have their attorney here.
our-
One of their attorneys is here if you want to talk
our
to them.
calendar, when we vote on our calendar, says 6 p.m., right? And that's what's posted on our website. We have enough notice to where I can make an announcement and do all the things that I do repetitively to make sure the public is aware. I'm sure there are a lot of people watching this evening that are listening to this as well. So, I mean, moving it to 4:30 is not necessarily an advertisement issue because it can be done. Just kind of need to know today.
Well, have we, I guess my question was, have we committed to the applicant that 6 o'clock is the time? Because I don't know if Mr. Reale's able to actually speak for all their expert witnesses and commit, we could start at 4:30. And I wouldn't want to put him on the spot either for it, or maybe he can.
I mean, I can make myself available at 4:30.
Come on up, Kevin, let me just,
open.
We're not talking about substance, just so you know. We're talking about, like, just technical, physical, doing the hearing right.
Yes. So I was Kevin Reale for the record. I do represent the Serrata in the application here with the hearing you're discussing. And I've been sitting quietly in the back. I think that I saw some things at the meeting that I'd like to just sort of say. So first off, there were a number of people in the room that didn't testify. And of course, it's their right to be in here. But there's probably a way to more efficiently have speakers come in. Another thing is there are some jurisdictions that we appear at that are very, very tight, and the name calling is, for example, something that's done here, it's done in St. Petersburg, but like in Tampa, they just line up. And, perhaps for the people that are outside, you tell them, hold your card and then line up and then come in, just observation. As far as venue, we have the same concerns you have. If we can be heard and you can see the presentation, we're happy to be there or here. We're not, but, and lastly, we can be here at 4:30. That's not, I can commit to that, because our experts, they're gonna have to travel, and we were here at 4 the other day anyway. I think there are ways to make it more efficient. We would echo your concerns and don't have an opinion one way or another beyond that.
Thank you, Kevin.
Maybe 5 o'clock to give people a chance to get home from work. I think 4:30,
That's good with me.
Fine with me.
Okay. We have a start time. So, location.
We're going to have it here?
The question is location. Do we do it here or do we do it there? And if we do it here, we still need to get IT time to figure out, does this blow up screen in the parking lot, et cetera, work?
Before sunset.
Before sunset.
can't see it before sunset.
Oh.
Can't see it before 6 p.m.
Yeah, get a tent. Get a tent and put it in the parking lot.
Where there's a will, there's a way, guys.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, at least
I still think we're better off having it here. And regardless of the whole issue, we probably ought to look into doing something over there at the community center with the
We need to
acoustics.
outfit that place.
Because it's all hard surfaces, and it needs acoustical panels on the walls. It's the only way to solve it. That'd be a...
Yeah, we'd have to replumb the place to make it useful for meeting purposes.
Yeah, but you could do acoustical panels on the walls
Panels.
to make a big difference.
Yeah, I think
Right now, it's hard. It's a hard floor, hard walls, and very limited acoustical ceiling.
It's good for a wedding, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if that's good. Acoustics are terrible, anytime I've ever been over there.
Okay. So,
You have more meetings coming up after this one of similar sizing capacity issues. So, I mean, we've got another one, we got 2 next month, potentially January, February, more after that.
yeah, we need to go set off the city manager, work with his team to figure out what and how we get it done.
Yeah, if y'all want to prepare for the future, then, there's certainly a list of things that would need to be done over there, the acoustics and the replumbing, and we can start working on that immediately for future meetings, if that's a direction y'all want us to take. I'd be glad to do.
Because we've had discussion, we did put money in the budget for replumbing here and in the, called the AV room. Maybe instead of replumbing the AV.
It's not just replumbing, I mean, we're talking about equipment, that would have to be purchased. You can't just pick this up and take it over there, so you're talking about basically setting up a whole system over there in that room to be able to do what we do here. Obviously, that takes some time to design, and it would be expensive, but we can start working on that if that's the direction y'all want to go.
Let's solve December 5th first, if as can suggest. And so, do we put it to a vote, or how do we want to do this? It's either here or...
We would need a motion if y'all want us to move. That's what it would take at this point for this particular meeting. I think it would have to be your decision as a board, as a commission.
I think we should have it here.
Yeah, I think we need to have it
manage
here.
it the best we can, recognizing that we're not going to do this again. Going forward, we're going to make sure that we have the facilities available for a bigger crew.
Well, I don't know that we could redesign that building even for the meeting for January. I mean, we're talking about, less than 2 months from now that would be a lot of work and a lot of money. But we could look for other facilities.
We may need to shop a conference facility.
And do it on
Another facility in town that would accommodate us, that would have everything we need in order to do that.
Right.
I don't know if that's available or not, but we can
And
certainly.
all the AV on a rental basis or a contract basis,
Yeah.
hire somebody. There's plenty. There should be people who do that for a living. Instead of us buying it and
We can,
plumbing out a room for 3 meetings a year.
we can try to make it work for certainly the January meeting if we look at all those possibilities, because it is an issue for this room to accommodate that kind of crowd.
So the consensus is we're going to keep it in this room and move it to 5 o'clock start time?
Yes. I mean, that's what
agreeable to everybody?
consensus, that's what I.
Is that a motion?
Do we need a motion or?
To change the time?
All one motion, that you want to keep it here and direct city clerk and IT that work on expanding, reviewing.
Well, I think we need to have, I'd like to see some kind of action plan by the end of the week that says if we're going to have it here, here's the steps that we're going to take. It can't happen like yesterday again.
Yeah, we can get our staff together and, I mean, we saw what happened last night, and we can get our staff together to come up with some ideas on how to better control that, especially with the comments. And there's been different ways, I've, as city attorney said, there's been meetings that I've been in also that went, 10 hours or whatever, but you've got a system so the people that are there know where they're going to be coming up. A lot of times it's just giving out a number with the cards when they sign in and a way to get them in and out, but we will immediately see what we can do to improve the situation, because we obviously observed the problems last night.
So do we need a motion?
I mean, I hear you right now, but if you want to make a motion.
No,
We don't normally do a motion, just to, I mean, basically we're changing the time.
Yeah.
It sounds like everybody's okay with it.
5 o'clock here.
Yeah.
Provide a game plan by the end of the week on how it's going to be conducted. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, once that's done, next project is to work on a longer-term plan,
We'll start immediately on that.
whether it's a rental or fit out or et cetera.
City Clerk, we're still on your reports.
I think I've done enough.
Yeah.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to respond to a couple of comments earlier. I think a couple of y'all mentioned it, and also I know at least one of the people that came up from the audience about when we were talking about the freebie, that larger developments should contribute some way to that, and we are proposing conditions in the CUPs that are upcoming that would address that. So you'll see that as you get that information. The only other thing I want to do, I want to thank Amber for all the hard work that she did on, on the records management. That was a lot of work, and it was an excellent, as y'all mentioned, excellent job on it, and it was something that was, I think, has been real important for us to get done. But thank you, Amber. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. City Attorney?
I'm fine, thank you.
Commissioner Morrow?
I've talked to the city manager about garbage and got an update. I know that Mike Clark has been preparing a report and it should have been delivered maybe today.
There's a draft.
Draft.
And we plan on bringing that report to the commission at the December meeting.
Okay, but not the December 5th meeting.
No.
So we'll have something to report back to the city, to the residents about how we're going to proceed with managing the alley issues that would allow for the...
Well, it'll be a summary of what they found. You know, our staff, along with Waste Connection and one of our residents, rode the alleys. And they recorded all of the issues that they saw in those alleyways. So it'll be telling you what that is, telling you what would need to be done if you want to try to get trucks back there. And, you know, we'll be looking at some of the costs involved in that too. And we'll, when we complete that report, we'll get it out to y'all ahead of time. Okay. And so you'll have it, but then we'll be ready to discuss it at that December 12th, I think, is that the meeting date.
We have the beach open, which is great. I'm sure we don't have permits from the DEP to put anything up to protect the dunes on the west side. And so people are walking on the dunes despite the fact that they're not supposed to, but that's just part of what we're dealing with, including dogs on the beach. I've also discussed with the city manager and Jennifer some type of messaging on our website that we are dog friendly, but that doesn't mean our entire beach is a dog beach, which people often think it is a dog beach. We have a dog beach, but the beach, as we know it, is not a dog beach. And we need to make that clear. And I think we need some more enforcement in that regard. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Just a couple of quick things. I was reading earlier that the Southwest Florida Water District has imposed, starting to impose watering restrictions. Now, it includes Pinellas County, but they're changing the days and the time of watering. I think it's to once a week. Don't quote me on it. We are in a drought. We have seen numbers anywhere from 7 to 20 inches behind rainfall. We have the reclaimed water system, so it didn't appear from what I read, and I just read a press release, so I don't have all the details. But it's a serious problem, and the Tampa Bay Water District, or I forget, the Tampa Bay Water controls the water also for Pinellas County, right? So it's we need to all do what we can, and you know, as a reminder, everybody, reclaimed water originally did come out of the ground. It did come out of the aquifers. So, it's a problem. I mean, it's good it rained today, and I know it would rain because I washed my car. So, I wanted to just double check with the city clerk for the December 5th meeting. We will have there'll be a lot of information for us to review. The earlier we can get that information out on the web, the better.
The plan is 1 week ahead of time.
1 week.
So 1 week before the 5th, so what's that, the Tuesday, the 28th? November 28th, it's 1 week.
Okay.
It's the best I can do with staff right now, just because of the size of the documents. But, I mean, you can see the planning board agenda too right now, so some of it will be similar to that.
Right, just wanted to...
Yeah, but we are going to...
appreciate everybody's work to get that done. And just since it is our last meeting before the holiday, just wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and safe travels if you're traveling, and be careful out there. They're predicting tremendous numbers of people traveling this holiday, but make sure everyone takes time and be with family and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Krause?
Oh, good.
Thank you. Unless there's anything else, we are adjourned. Good night, everyone.